on. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Asheville City Council meeting, to our June 4th City Council meeting. First of all, if you could please mute your cell phones. If you need a parking sticker for free parking in the Civic Center garage, please see the sign-in table, and they'll give you a parking sticker so you can get out of the garage. And if you want to speak on any item on the agenda, please go to the front desk and sign in, and they will have, if you haven't already, they will help you sign in to speak tonight. First, before we begin, I need a motion to allow Councilwoman Mosley to participate remotely. Do I have a motion?
So moved. It's Gwen.
Say.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I've got to do a roll call vote, so I will, okay, I'm going to start down there. Okay. Councilwoman Turner.
Aye.
Our Vice Mayor.
Aye.
Myself, aye. And Councilwoman Whistler.
Aye.
Councilwoman Kilgore.
Aye.
Councilwoman Roney.
Aye.
And Councilwoman Mosley. Is she there?
Aye.
Okay. All right, that was unanimous. Thank you. We're all like looking at the ceiling, like she's in the ceiling, but that's where her voice comes from. Okay, so if you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a number of proclamations this evening, which is exciting. We're getting back into proclamations. And the first one is Pride Month, and I've got a few different people who might be here for this. If you are, is anyone here for this one? Yes. Oh, Allison. Okay, great. If you'll meet me down at the lectern. Doesn't feel like it. It's on? Okay, now we're good. Okay, whereas the city of Asheville strives to be a place where all are welcome to live, work, and play, and every person deserves a place to call home where they are safe, happy, accepted, and supported. And whereas the battle for dignity, equality, and personal safety for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer people is reflected in the tireless commitment of impacted community members, advocates, and allies who strive to forge a more equitable, inclusive, and just society. Whereas Pride Month initiated in June of 1970 on the one-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising in New York City after LGBTQ plus residents and allies rose and fought against police harassment and discriminatory laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. And whereas the city of Asheville appreciates the cultural, civic, and economic contributions of our LGBTQ plus community members who strengthen our collective well-being through their participation, and whereas it is imperative that young people in our community, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their community, and whereas LGBTQ2 plus Q plus people in the United States, disproportionately based on race and class, face disparities in employment, healthcare, education, housing, and many other areas. And whereas Asheville's non-discrimination ordinance recognizes that it is in the best interest of residents of Asheville to enact protections against discrimination that reflect the community's shared values of equity, inclusion, and fair access, and to preserve the health, safety, and welfare of people without regard to certain actual or perceived status or characteristics. And whereas the city of Asheville has determined interwoven equity as a theme for our Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan. And whereas, as an employer, the city of Asheville has an opportunity to provide a safe and inclusive workplace for all its employees and to be a leader towards LGBTQ plus equity and inclusion. While there is much work to be done, we are committing to a better future, acknowledging what Marsha P. Johnson was credited as saying, "No pride for some of us without liberation for all of us." Now therefore, I, Esther Manheimer, Mayor of Asheville, do hereby proclaim June 2022 as Asheville Pride Month in the city of Asheville and urge all citizens to recognize this observance. You can say a few words, and you'll take that.
Thank you, Esther and the council members. I stand here before you while many cannot, because they have not survived the hate and bigotry that our country has fought and continues to fight. Pride is a month that's difficult for me personally. I know I stand here because others who've come before me, primarily Black and brown trans women and gender diverse people, have literally laid their lives down fighting oppression. And while I celebrate these steps, and it's important to celebrate every step, I believe, we also must continue to fight and acknowledge the inequities that are still in front of us. Proclamations are wonderful symbols, and we all want to see action. And I believe that we can get there together. Thank you.
Dawana, you want to meet me here? I'll be reading the proclamation for Juneteenth. Paul? Whereas Juneteenth recognizes and commemorates the day of June 19th, 1865, when enslaved African Americans in Texas, nearly 9 decades after the nation's founding, and more than 2 years after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, were informed that they were free, ending 246 years of chattel slavery. And whereas for African Americans in this country, Juneteenth is the closest occasion of a true Freedom Day, a day of celebration of liberation, emancipation, and freedom. And whereas to this day, the nation continues to struggle to dismantle the legacy of systemic racism, inequality, and humanity. And whereas we must collectively strive to close gaps of immeasurable distance between us and affirm the promise of the Declaration of Independence that all people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to hold that purpose for American government, we must secure these rights for all. And whereas the city of Asheville continues its work of equity and justice, the City Council remains committed to identifying actionable items to improve policies and procedures, to improve access to opportunities, and to ensure that employees and residents do not experience inequality in or by the City of Asheville government. And now, therefore, I do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth in the city of Asheville, and encourage all community members to honor June 19th as a day of reflection, cultural and public education, earnest assessment, planning, and commitment to action to end systemic racism and all forms of dehumanization which threaten equality and freedom for all.
I would like to thank the city for proclamating this day, the 19th. It is a day that we have been celebrating for years, greatly due to the work that had been done in Hillcrest Public Housing Community, and they had this event for 12 years that celebrated what was not being recognized nationally or by our city or county. And so I wanted them to come up here and stand with me because they have continued to keep that on the forefront of people's mind year after year. And I just wanted to celebrate the Black people of Asheville in this opportunity to proclamate this day and celebrate. So everybody come to Juneteenth on the 18th, which is Saturday.
Thank you. Thank you. We have one final proclamation this evening, National Pollinator Week. And if you're here for National Pollinator Week, please join Sage Turner and feel free to put these on.
Counsel, you as well.
All right, and 10A on. Thank you, everyone. Whereas pollinator species, such as thousands of species of bees, are essential partners in producing much of our food supply, and whereas pollinator species provide significant environmental benefits that are necessary for maintaining healthy, diverse urban and suburban ecosystems, and whereas pollination plays a vital role for the trees and plants of our community, enhancing our quality of life and creating recreational and economic development opportunities, and whereas for decades, the city of Asheville has managed urban landscapes and public lands that include many municipal parks and greenways, as well as wildlife habitats. And whereas the city of Asheville provides recommendations to developers and residents regarding landscaping to promote wise conservation stewardship, including the protection of pollinators and maintenance of their habitats in urban and suburban environments. Now, therefore, I do hereby recognize Asheville as the birthplace and inaugural affiliate of Bee City USA and proclaim the week of June 20 through 26, 2022 as our municipality's observance of National Pollinator Week and urge all citizens to recognize this observance.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you, City Council, for making this possible. There are now 300 affiliates in 45 states because it all started right here 10 years ago on June 26, when our City Council adopted the resolution to become the inaugural bee city in the U.S. The need is greater than ever. Our pollinators are in serious, serious trouble. So everything that we can do to support our pollinators is actually supporting ourselves, our planet, the biodiversity on this planet, especially in the face of climate change. So it's not less important than it was 10 years ago. It's more important than ever that we continue this educational campaign to get people to use fewer pesticides, if any, and to plant the native plants that were here for thousands of years that our pollinators rely on, and they rely on those pollinators. So thank you so much for supporting Bee City all these years. We hope we can take it to the next level and get the commitments of Bee City USA into our comprehensive plan for the city of Asheville, which is a new commitment since we started 10 years ago. All the new cities do that. So I look forward to working on that with the city. And I have some of the volunteers here, and Asheville Greenworks, Dawn Chavez is here. Greenworks actually manages the program for the city of Asheville. So we couldn't do this without all these volunteers like Betsy. Betsy, who's the co-chair of our Bee City USA committee. So thank you so much for all the support, and we just want to continue this work and do even more and make Asheville the best Bee City USA affiliate in the country. Thanks.
Okay, we have we noticed Deborah did. Someone needs to give Deborah some antennae. She doesn't have it. Brad's gonna share hers. Yes. Okay. All right, so that concludes our proclamations for this evening. We're gonna move on to the consent agenda. Are there questions, comments, or a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
This is Sage, I'll move.
Oh, this is Gwen, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. And thank you. Yeah, here I am. We don't have anyone signed up to speak under this item. We have another. Okay. Thanks. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Unless there are any other questions or comments, I'm going to do a roll call vote, and I'm going to start with Vice Mayor.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Councilwoman Whistler.
Aye.
And Kilgore.
Aye.
And Roney.
Aye.
And Mosley.
Aye.
Okay, and Turner.
Aye.
All right, that concludes our Adoption of the consent agenda. Sorry, they gave me the roll call vote names, but they're not actually in the order you're sitting. So I'm trying to decide so I'm trying to move through this. So that was my hesitation there. We're moving on to the presentation and reports. We have the manager's report this evening. I'm turning it over to Deborah Campbell, the city manager.
Thank you. Good afternoon, or good evening now. My name is Deborah Campbell, serve as your city manager, and I take great pride today in presenting an employee recognition, and actually it'll be plural. We'll have two staff that'll be recognized tonight. Next slide, please. City of Asheville employees are heroes in lots of ways. I am personally pleased to acknowledge their exemplary work all the time, but especially when an employee does something extraordinary. Tonight, in particular, I want to acknowledge an employee in our Public Works Department for saving a coworker's life. And I know that several months ago, we acknowledged an employee who worked for Water Resources Department. And tonight, we're going to recognize someone in our Public Works Department. I want to personally thank Larry Galt in Public Works for calling me the day that this incident happened to share this amazing act of compassion and heroism. Next slide, please. So I want to introduce you to our City of Asheville hero. And as I said, we have lots of heroes. But Bobby Roberts with the Public Works Department, he is an inspector, and just want to thank him for his extraordinary effort. Next slide, please. So I just want to give you a little bit about what the incident was. Several public works inspectors were having lunch when Wayne Little started choking on his sandwich. And this event happened on May the 26th. Co-workers said that less than 45 seconds from the start of the incident, Wayne's eyes rolled into his head and he began to pass out. And I must share with you what Larry said to me. He said, Ms. Campbell, I kind of choked myself. I got really, really nervous and was unable to respond. But Mr. Roberts was the first to respond to the situation and perform the Heimlich maneuver on Mr. Little. After several attempts, the food was finally dislodged. Bobby's quick action and calmness saved the co-worker's life. Bobby and Wayne are both inspectors in the Public Works Department, and unfortunately, Mr. Little is on vacation, and Mr. Roberts he doesn't like all the attention, but I told him, you're going to be recognized for this, again, extraordinary heroism. Next slide, please. And so I want to thank Bobby, I want to thank Wayne, and I want to thank Larry for sharing the information with me. And now I'd like to ask Nikki Reed if she would come up and share some other information with us about another employee.
I think first we'll give What an amazing story. Thank you so much, Deborah, for sharing. And it's my privilege tonight to share another employee update. And I'd like to recognize Sasha Vertunsky. She has been hired to be our affordable housing officer. So yes, excited for Sasha. Great to have you. Sasha has been a public servant for a number of years and most recently worked in our planning and urban design department as an urban planner. South Slope Plan, which is forthcoming, is one of the projects that she worked on in her past. And we're very excited to have her be our new affordable housing officer. You'll actually see her later in the agenda present tonight. So again, we welcome Sasha and thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, Nikki. And congratulations, Sasha. All righty, that concludes the city manager's report. Thank you.
I'm not used to such a short city manager's report. No, that's great. I know. Okay, we have a number of public hearings on our agenda for this evening. First item is public hearing item A, to consider a land use incentive grant for Hilliard Flats LLC for development on 217 Hilliard Avenue. And debuting in her new role, Sasha Bertinsky, and I'm always going to say that wrong.
Oh, it's perfect.
really close. Okay, good.
If I had had the option of Mr. Roberts and just not showing up for the recognition, I would have gone that route. That was a last-minute plan. So yes, Councilwoman, thank you very much. I'm here to present the land use incentive grant request for 217 Hilliard. Some of you are familiar with this project from committee work. Some key takeaways. This application is unique for us in that this development is micro-housing. It will be 80 units total, and so they are committing 16 units to be affordable for 20 years at 80% or below. And through the scoring matrix, they qualify for 21 years of taxes paid. And this project has already been approved by planning and zoning. It hasn't received a zoning permit yet. So if you approve this project, you are in effect approving a waiver for having gone through the zoning approval already, which is part of our policy. And I can explain that further if you want. So just a few things of background. As I said, there's a total of 80 units. Housing represents 100% of the all rentable square footage. And, we're looking at affordability for 80% AMI or below. And the developer is estimating a total construction cost of $7.2 million. So we're currently using that as the estimate for the tax value after it's built. And it's on less than a quarter of an acre, 0.87 acres on Hilliard Avenue. So this is the breakdown of the points that they receive through the matrix. I can go through them, but basically affordable housing, rental assistance, their location, because they're right around the corner from the transit center and close to Asheville Middle and a bunch of other amenities. They have great location, energy efficiency points, and universal design. And that's what gets us to 21 years. So I'm gonna quickly just go to the site plan so you can understand what I'm talking about here. So this building is being built between two existing. So there's a historic house on Grove Street, which is an office building, and the former hotspot at the corner of Ashland and Hilliard. So currently the estimated taxes for that parcel is $787 a year. That gets subtracted from the new taxes once the development is built. If we do it that way, the taxes estimated are $29,000, so the difference would be around $28,000. And that's what the city would pay for 21 years. Just as a reminder, I know you all know this, but maybe for the public, but once the building is built and it gets valued by Buncombe County Tax Department, we use that tax value. So these are estimates. And then that last statement is just kind of saying, the total grant would be around $592,000 for 21 years, around this per unit subsidies around $37,000 per unit. So for a downtown location, that's actually pretty good. We used to try to keep subsidies pretty low, but downtown land is very expensive. And then after year 21, the city will start receiving the full tax amount. So I already showed you this picture of the existing conditions. This project went through design review, planning and zoning. It's a level 2 project, didn't have to come to council. Here are some sample floor plans. So these are micro units, and so what that means is that they're very small units. Each floor has a full kitchen and a lounge that's shared, and there's room for a microwave, and I believe there's a sink. So, and these are some renderings of the exterior of the building. And it's very small, so if you walk by it, you'll see, you're kind of amazed that this much building would fit on such a small piece of land. So their walk score and bike score is very high. And this project was reviewed, or the Luigi request was reviewed by both HCD and Finance Committee. HCD was a vote of 2-1 in favor, and Finance 3-0.
Just to let the council know, I was the dissenting vote when it came to our committee for housing and community development, and location was very important to me. This is in Census Tract 9, also known as Southside Community, and based on the housing need, I don't think we met near the affordability level that the community members in that area need. And I have another follow-up question for you. There is another development right across the street on Hilliard. It's going to be about 300 plus units. I'm wondering what new development like that near neighborhoods, how that's going to affect their property taxes, because that's the Southside community, and we know that after the tax reappraisal, they got hit hard. So how does new development affect homeowners in the Southside community?
Great question. I don't have a scientific, or a statistical analysis. I think generally development does, we haven't experienced, I've been here almost 25 years, we haven't experienced property taxes going down yet.
But in particular, what is new development?
Sure.
That type of swank development, what does it do for Black homeowners? It is very close to Black homeowners who are struggling. This tax appraisal, everybody was really under distress because we saw that the rest of the community also went through tax hikes, maybe not as high, but they were disproportionately affected, in other words.
Yes.
It was very high. So I'm just wondering, generally speaking, what is new development that close to communities? What does it usually do to property taxes?
I would think, yes, we could generally say that new development, especially in the center of cities and these, the South Side community is right next to downtown. So it's this very, now it's become this desirable location. So it does affect all property owners and disproportionately affects people of color for sure, as we've seen in some of the studies that have come out about Asheville's.
And I think the county's still working on how to address the disparity in the property tax valuations by neighborhood. I saw that they've been continuing to work on that, but I don't know that we have a resolution or solution to that.
And both the city and the county have programs to help, support property owners that are low and moderate income. I know there's a process, that you have to file to get the assistance, but we do have a program and it's part of our proposed budget.
Can I ask you a question about the micro-unit concept? I was actually listening to a piece on NPR this morning where they were using micro-units actually to transition folks out of experiencing homelessness. And I can't recall what the city was, but it was a nonprofit run housing, not this scenario. But I'm not surprised to see that Asheville's seeing this kind of housing being introduced. I've heard of one other project like this on Haywood Road. Have you seen others where there's the shared spaces? How these floor plans are laid out with the micro units?
I haven't seen them locally. I've heard of them as a planner.
Yeah.
Of course, and definitely familiar with them as like a nonprofit model to helping folks, or even seniors, things like that.
But the developer feels that the folks that are likely to rent these units, they'll only be able to accommodate 20% at ADMI or lower. They're thinking otherwise it's going to be folks making greater than 80% of AMI.
Well, and I should say that David Moritz, who is the developer, is here tonight, and I'm sure he'd be happy to
Good
come.
question for that. Right. Okay.
Come speak.
Yeah, that was one question I wanted to ask too, but if he's here, then I'll wait. Thanks.
I just have a clarification because it looks like reading through the slides, there's one critical piece not mentioned that is in the staff report, and that is that while 20% of the units will be affordable, half of those units will also accept a voucher, which I think is made it in the staff report, but not in the presentation. So just for the public.
Half of the 20%.
Yes, half of the 20% of the affordable units will accept a voucher, which is part of the Luigi policy. Yes.
Yes.
If you could just introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm David Moritz. I'm a developer here in Asheville. I've lived here 8 years. I'm local. And we're excited to bring workforce housing to downtown Asheville. We think obviously one of the biggest issues in Asheville right now is reasonably priced housing. And this is our way to address it. Obviously, construction costs have gone up significantly, and we've seen this model done in other cities. My business partners built 10 of them most recently, or the closest one is in Nashville, Tennessee. It's recently been completed. It's 100% occupied, mostly by workforce. People, generally, the average age is in the late 20s. So it's a popular model. And we think it'll be great for downtown, activate the city, bring workforce living here rather than out far away from town. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the project.
Okay. Well, what I wanted to ask about is this, because it is the shared amenities or whatever, and they're smaller units. So what would usually would the rent range be in this particular unit building?
So, just to explain a little bit more about the micro housing. So, I mean, it's similar to sharing a house. Each person gets their own room. Our model is very specific that everyone gets their own private bathroom. In each unit, you'll have a microwave, a mini sink, a mini fridge, so you can do some food preparation and everything. And then on each floor, there's a common living space and a common kitchen that has full facilities, so you can bake and cook and everything. So the idea with our concept is there's a certain amount of sharing of space, but it's not a requirement. So for some people who just want to live in their own space, they have their own private bathroom, they have everything they need to live. So definitely the pricing of the units is going to be, I would say, the most reasonably priced apartment space to live in the city, based on the way they're built. It'll be market-based rent. We're estimating around $1,000 a month with all utilities included. The nearest studio nearby currently, like at the Patton, runs about $1,800 a month. So this will be significantly lower. Obviously, it's a compromise for people. It's micro housing, it's different. But what I've seen in some of the other, like in Nashville, Tennessee, it's a very social environment also. So there's some benefits to having the co-living aspect of the project.
I was asking that because the product in itself is affordable because of these different, unique characteristics. So like you said, if it's running about $1,000 a month and 80% AMI or less, then it will definitely, a lot of people will be able to benefit from that. If not, from using the vouchers or whatever, it'll still be a benefit. That's all I was trying to make that point.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that, the units will be reasonably priced. But we'd like to dedicate 20% of the units to fit within the 80% AMI and lock that in for 21 years because, we don't know exactly how the market's going to be with inflation and everything. So we'd like to, use this program to dedicate the 20% units to be affordable for 21 years.
I know that annually we receive updated figures, and we're soon to receive the new AMIs, probably here in the next month or so. And I'm looking at the 2021 chart in an efficiency or studio with utilities included, which is kind of what we're talking about here, would be $1,053 a month. So you're spot on about workforce and really kind of leaning into affordability already, so. It's interesting. I'm actually really thankful to see a different model and see how this goes. And I hope that you will, if built, continue to update us on the progress. And I might even be curious to hear about some of those others you mentioned in nearby communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
This is Kim. I really appreciate the Energy Star and green building elements of this. I'm on a mission to ask everybody developing housing around here if we're going to have solar or renewable energy options, even if it's for common utilities, or if there's not a plan for it, has a place been identified for future investment and such?
We are looking at doing solar. So it's something that is possible. We haven't committed to it yet, but it's something that my business partner has done on other projects like this. So definitely we are aligned with sustainability and energy efficiency. I mean, there are certain things that make this project easier to build. For example, because we pay for all the utilities for everyone, we just have one electric meter. And so there's other things like that that allow us to be a bit more sustainable. And it would make a lot of sense to do solar, for example, and something we've discussed. So we haven't broken ground yet. And so it's something that we'll definitely consider.
Thank you for that. I also appreciate the inclusion of vouchers.
The site plan includes the home next to it. Are you buying that but not doing it? That's not included in the project? It just is outlined in the lot? Or is that just our,
we
is that just our
we
funny
purchased the
mapping?
property, and the land for this development is going to be split off from that, but we will continue to own that building.
Okay, but it's not included in this
It's not
project.
included in the
It's just
project. Although we are adding something for the city that wasn't a requirement, is that we'll extend the sidewalk all the way through in front of that house, so that, because that currently sidewalk is very narrow, so we're going to have a full sidewalk all along that street, that section of the street.
If approved and all tonight and all things go as planned, when do you expect to build or complete?
We'd like to break ground this summer, and the construction timing would be about 12 to 18 months. So we're hoping to finish this within 2023.
Any other questions for the developer? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Council, if you don't have any other immediate questions, we have one person signed up to speak under this item. Okay. Folks, when you sign up to speak under each item, you're allowed to have 3 minutes to speak. And Nina Tovish, there you are. You're signed up to speak under this.
Good evening, Council, and I apologize in advance because this is just the first of 3 comments this evening. Please bear with me. I heard some new information just now, which influences a little bit what I hope to say. My understanding is under this agreement, only 16 units, which are essentially glorified dorm rooms, will be available to folks making 80% of AMI, which is $42,000 for a single person or $48,000 for a couple. And it's not clear to me whether these units do accommodate, are big enough really to accommodate 2 people. With only 8 units eligible for housing vouchers, let's be clear, these minimalistic units are not going to make a dent in the need for affordable housing for Asheville's residents who work in the city's service economy. It also isn't clear to me, and I didn't know who to ask to get the answer to this, whether the developer actually intends to use the rest of the building that is outside of the affordable units for standard length residential leases, or whether those other units will be available for short-term rentals by right because they're in the central business district.
That's not
Not a thing anymore? Okay, I wasn't sure about that. Thank you for clarifying. In return, the city waives a big chunk of taxes for a period that, when I looked at the materials on the city site, seemed to be 1 year longer than the 20 years of the promised affordability. Maybe that's changed as well. If so, I'm glad to hear it. But in any case, I'm questioning the value for taxpayer money here. The notion that a profit-making business with 80 units of housing right downtown would pay an annual tax amounting to only 35% of the property tax on a modestly valued 10-year-old house like mine, I have a hard time wrapping my mind around that. I'd like to think that the city might find better ways to leverage the nearly $600,000 of foregone tax revenue. But if you are going to do it, at the very least, the number of units set aside as affordable should be larger, the percentage AMI should be lower, they should all accept housing vouchers, and the period of affordability should be longer. Thank thank you for your attention this evening.
Thank you. We don't have anyone else signed up to speak under this. I do think it would be helpful to know, and we've discussed the Luigi policy, which is what we've rewritten it maybe 6 times now, something like that. This project conforms to the current policy guidelines. I'm looking, yes, you're saying yes. So we're not being asked to change the policy in any way or modify the policy. It's being applied as written.
Yes. Correct. I mean, the policy also says that council has the power to ask for more or to negotiate something if you want.
Sure, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, because it does, whenever we get a request like this, I feel like council sort of struggles a little bit about whether the policy is right or not and whether we need to revisit it.
For what it's worth, as the chair of HCD, we have a lot of housing things brewing, and this is on the list to discuss, this particular micro units and greater AMI or lower AMI and so on. So know that it's queuing up for discussion, at least at a committee level. Lastly, I wanted to share one thing if I could, because in preparation for so much housing, council made housing, affordability, and stability one of its top priorities this year. So I've been reviewing our existing housing strategy plan from 2008. I'm just going to read 2 sentences from it that I thought struck me. The solution to Asheville's affordable housing needs, this is from 2008, is a long-term commitment to continue wrestling with the problem. The city of Asheville cannot meet all housing needs alone. True partnership between local government, private and nonprofit housing developers, and residents is required to create more affordable housing opportunities. Asheville as a whole needs to recognize that housing is the most fundamental of needs. Housing stability is an indicator of a person's ability to meet his or her other basic needs. I just find it fascinating that's still in from 2008 and still very true today. The partnerships across all public, private, nonprofit, we need them all, I think. So just sharing that little tidbit. And if there's no other comments, I'm happy to make a motion.
I have a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Antoinette.
Sorry, I wanted to piggyback on something that the vice mayor said earlier, and I'm noticing, or it's not lost on me, the similarity between what the vice mayor just said and what the folks from Emma during our last meeting were concerned about. Sage, you mentioned that HCD was going to look into this policy. I'm wondering if discussion has been had with the developer about the possibility of increasing the affordability. Because at this point, I'm inclined to agree with the vice mayor.
Not to my knowledge. I don't know if the developer wishes to speak to that.
Are you saying the number of units or the level of affordability?
Both and.
Okay.
I share the concern that the vice mayor has, given the location of the development. The fear is that, and not just gentrification, but the folks who live in that area may not be the ones who are able to move in. And I'm also concerned with the increase in property taxes.
Do you want to speak to that? You don't have to, yeah.
As we anticipate an answer, I have a curiosity about what would it take to get to a deeper affordability? How many fewer units would it take to get to that 60% AMI? So maybe woven into the same answer.
So, I mean, first of all, this is our genuine best attempt to bring reasonably priced housing to downtown Asheville. I currently don't see anybody else doing that. At least actively doing it, rather than talking about it. Construction costs have gone up significantly since we started this. So we would love to do this project and bring 80 units of housing for 80 people who want to live downtown that currently can't because they can't find a place to live. we'd like to work with the city to provide 20% of the units under your affordability requirement for 21 years and lock that in. We've met all the requirements for the Luigi grant based on your matrix. And so, you know, that's what we're willing to do. Already, with the construction costs that are increasing so much, the project is tight. And so, I mean, the answer to is this is what we've got that we can do. I mean, to answer your question, Kim, I don't really know how the numbers would stack up in terms of doing fewer units at a deeper discount. I haven't really done that math.
I appreciate that. Could I also ask a clarifying question, because I'm getting two different answers on whether or not this is eligible for short-term rentals at a 30-day?
The city ordinance doesn't, you can.
Yeah, the city ordinance enacted in 2018 is going to prohibit in this particular, as in most zoning categories, short-term rental, which are leases for anything less than 30 days. So given that it is a new development, regardless of it being in the downtown or central business, it is going to be limited in the ability for any of the units to be allowed to be utilized as short-term rental under our current ordinance. So there, to do otherwise would expose it to a zoning violation.
Is that it? Okay.
I would like to say that, no, I don't have a question for him. Just in general, I think the developer met all the requirements based on policy, but moving forward, location does matter. We do have a couple census tracts that are desperate for affordable housing. So just giving that community a swath of affordable housing, or, you know, just a measure of housing choice vouchers, it's not sufficient. It's not enough. It's not going to meet the community need. My concern is twofold. Affordability level, is it meeting the need of the community members that are so desperate for housing, as well as how does it impact homeowners that abut the new development? We cannot answer that question. They're already desperately trying to keep their homes after the tax reappraisal, on top of inflation, on top of the rise in gas prices and food costs. Most of these people, we're talking about elderly people or people who don't even qualify for the tax relief programs that we have. So there are a lot of unanswered questions for me concerning this development. And again, I don't want to discourage any developers from coming to the table, but I think we have to do our due diligence to put stuff out in front of developers. Hey, the community which you purchase this property is this type of community with this type of income base, this type of affordability need. And then we won't have conversations like this where it feels like it's not a win-win. We need a win-win. So I'm going to continue in my no.
I wonder too, that makes me think about, it's not just this project and it's not just the one coming across the street. There's the one that was just built up the corner, the other one that was just built up the top of the corner, now the one coming next to it. This part of Hilliard is going to be very busy and
on top of the other end of
right.
the South Side community, which is the River Arts District. It seems like all of this, you know, development is moving in on this community that is desperate for some type of relief, and we're not giving them any by continuing to approve development like this. I guess we're just going to have to come to the table and do better negotiation. This project in another area would be superb. But, you know, otherwise.
Well, I mention it because I wonder about land use and buffers and the transition from this corridor that's going to have all this growth to the neighborhood, if that's something we could review before all this gets built. You know, we have a great new affordable housing leader now. But something, land use, it might be worth looking into.
That sounds, I mean, yeah.
Obviously
I mean,
not
we,
tonight.
I think we've recognized long ago that what's within our control is city-owned land, so we're, and we're finding that very challenging. I mean, the Hilliard and Klingman project, using the old parks maintenance facility, you end up even there where we're putting the city's land into the project to help create deeply affordable housing, ends up with the cost of construction still not having a mix of units that seems like a majority are being offered at that affordable level. The city did partner on the redevelopment of Lee Walker to double the number of units approximately there on the other side, and is working hard on the Matthews Ford site, which I hope will move forward again. I mean, again, these are city-owned properties, something that we have control over, but we know the challenges even there when we're trying to get those properties developed. I think it's very difficult to expect that we can solve an affordable housing crisis out of new construction, just because of the cost of lands and construction. The numbers don't seem to work well. So I appreciate the challenge, and I don't know what the solution is other than doing more of what we're trying to do, which is preserve some of that city land for housing for folks that are in community.
It may be worth mentioning too, this idea of workforce housing. It was probably 4 or 5 years ago that these AMI incentive-based things like Luigi were focusing on 100 AMI and 120 AMI even, and we've been bumping it down as incomes go up in the area. But I am aware that some of our service industry, some of our large organized service industry folks are gathering around the crisis they're facing, which is they don't quite qualify for 80 below. They're right around 90 or 100 AMI, and they can't find anything either. Much like the mayor was saying, how some of these projects turn out to be like some affordable and some at the very other end. And there's some missing workforce numbers in there. And I keep hearing this in the community and from our workforce themselves. So I'm just kind of putting that out there that it probably needs to be discussed as well as we move forward reviewing policies.
I have one last question. Because this is already the level of development that it is, and acknowledging that it may be a false binary, is the option before us that we build unaffordable units or partner for affordable units? It's going up either way.
Right. I mean, that, I think just for the community's benefit, we're not approving this project. We're only approving Luigi. It would not have been required to come in front of council because the developer, followed all the rules. It's not a conditional zoning. The only issue here is Luigi and the fact that, trying to incentivize some affordable housing.
In other words, if we don't approve the Luigi grant, the developer's option is to move forward with no affordability in the project at all, without any city subsidy. So it's really, do we want to put this level of subsidy into, which is the future income that we haven't earned yet from the improvements to the property, or do we want to just say no and let it go forward as 100%, well, whatever, market rate units? I mean, that's.
I'm wondering,
Yep, go ahead, Antoinette, please.
I'm wondering if the developer would be willing to go back and crunch the numbers that Councilwoman Roney suggested. I think she suggested at 60 to see what is possible before we move forward with this vote.
In other words, reducing the number of affordable units, but getting them to that more deeply affordable number.
Yes.
That's what I'm wondering, yes.
We don't meet again till, 2 weeks, in 2 weeks. Would you want to take a pause and do some number crunching and come back in 2 weeks, or?
The short answer is no. We've been working on this project for over a year. We'd like to get started with it. It's like I said before, it's a very popular, it is a compromise doing micro apartments, but for my business partner, he's done 10 of these throughout the United States, and most of them are 100% leased. So there's clearly a demand for them. People like them. They want to live there. We know that you have a program to incentivize locking in the rents for 21 years. And so, you know, we've met all the requirements to do that, and that's what we're prepared to do. And so, yeah, I think this is our, if we don't get this, I mean, I think this is a great project. It's a great location. It's near the transit. We'd love to dedicate 20% to affordability for 21 years. We'd also be delighted to accept vouchers for that. And I do appreciate your comment about the taxes in the neighborhood. I would just say I'm also supportive of your thought that it's, you know, when development occurs in an area, it shouldn't be at the detriment of the current residents. I mean, I'm just a citizen, but I would say it would make sense to maybe lock in the tax rates in those neighborhoods. I don't, you know, it shouldn't be their fault if there's development, but I also, on the, you know, on the other side, on our part, we're just trying to bring housing for workforce in downtown Asheville, which is really desperately needed. And so we've put a lot of thought into this project. We've been working on it for over a year, and we'd love to work with you in dedicating 20%, but you know, what we're proposing today is what we're willing to do. Thank you.
So I just want to be really clear here that, and I am a little new to this is the third one I've come to you with, but the way the policy works, you commit to 20 years, the maximum benefit is 21 years. So I've heard David say a couple times, locking in for 21 years. So it's 20 years. If he wants to offer you 21 years or 25 years, he's free to do that, and we can change the resolution. But I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Any other questions?
Okay, so I really, really hope that we can get a better policy in place for what we need. And I'm struggling with this one because as folks are dealing with the cost of living going up, the cost of transportation is also going up. And the very close proximity to transit means accessibility to a lot of jobs. So while I'm struggling with this one, I'm going to support it for the people who will be living in those 8 units. And I want to see us come back with a better policy that reflects our values.
Ready? I'm happy to make a motion. I move to approve the land use incentive grant application for Hilliard Flats LLC at 217 Hilliard Avenue.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to do a roll call vote, and I'm rotating the order. I'm going to start with myself. Aye. Councilwoman Whistler.
Aye.
Councilwoman Kilgore.
Aye.
Councilwoman Roney.
Aye.
Councilwoman Mosley.
No.
Councilwoman Turner.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith.
No.
Okay, thank you all. Please turn on your microphone.
Okay.
Yep.
Only thing I would like to say is when they, Mosley and Smith, their concerns about the tax situation, that is a very, it's a situation that we really need to address, but it is something that the city and Buncombe County needs to address. As far as tax incentives, as far as abatement of taxes or reduction of taxes of the people that live within the community. That is not something that the developer actually has any control over. So I guess that's another conversation we need to have later, but we really need to look at what we can do for the peoples in the community and Native community who are impacted by these rising taxes, you know, which is caused by no reason for, which has been caused not by them. So that's another conversation that we need to have, is working on reduction in taxes for the Native community, especially those who are being affected and driven out of their homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, now we are moving on to our last public hearing item, and that is a public hearing on the fiscal year 2022-2023 annual operating budget. And I'm going to kick it to the city manager once again, Deborah Campbell.
Thank you, and good evening again. On May 24th, staff presented the manager's proposed fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. At that meeting, council identified a number of adjustments and asked us to go back and reconsider. Before we take another important step in the budget process of receiving public comment, we would like to present to you all some suggested adjustments or revisions considered that we hope that you all will consider in the proposed budget. Also, I want to again thank and acknowledge staff in our finance department, which include Finance Director Tony McDowell, who you'll hear from just shortly, and the staff in the budget division, including Taylor Floyd, Heather Curry, and Abigail Riley. Next slide, okay. This proposed budget, which totals $216.9 million, is a balanced and fiscally responsible spending plan that recommends no change in the current property tax rate, continues funding core community service in a time of rising costs, and provides additional investments that align with council priorities, fund employee compensation adjustments that reflect inflation in the labor market and local cost of living increases, and strategically utilizes fund balance and American Rescue Plan funding to advance council's priorities and balance the budget. So I would like to turn it now over to Tony McDowell, and staff is recommending additional investments based on the feedback that we received at the May 24th meeting.
And before Tony goes, can I just say thank you for all the work you've done with staff in getting us to this point. And also just for the public watching, we do not vote on this tonight. We will take public comment, of course, and have many people signed up to speak, but council won't vote on the budget until the next meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Campbell. And good evening, Tony McDowell, Finance Director. I do have a brief presentation tonight before we open up the public hearing, and I want to start by giving you all a brief recap of the budget presentation that Ms. Campbell mentioned that we did on May 24th. So as always, we like to start with the timeline to kind of give everyone an indication of where we're at in the process. We're near the end of the process, as you all know. This is the next to the last step in adoption of the FY 22-23 budget. It's the statutorily required public hearing. And as we said, we presented the budget to you all on May 24th, and I'll just do a quick recap of some of the information we shared on the 24th. First of all, as Ms. Campbell mentioned, the FY 23 total budget is approximately $217 million. That's an increase of about 8% over the current year budget. The general fund, which is the largest piece of our overall budget, is up about 9% for next year. And listed on this slide are the other funds, the enterprise funds that make up the rest of our budget. Each year as we start the budget process internally, we have certain guiding principles that we utilize when making budget decisions. And these are the three that we've really focused on the last few years. And it's focusing on essential service delivery, and that's ensuring the departments have the resources required to meet service delivery expectations. It's enhancing customer value, which means ensuring that sufficient or efficient service delivery that improves the customer experience. And then strategic alignment, which means aligning with you all's priorities that are reflected and that reflect things heard through the community as well as staff. So those priorities this year that council identified, these are the 6 priorities that came out of your strategic retreat that you had back in March. And this really was the blueprint that we used to make budget decisions this year. So to go over some of those investments, and again, we covered these at the presentation 2 weeks ago, some of the key investments in the proposed budget, the first of which is compensation. We are recommending a increase in compensation, our minimum compensation, to $35,360 with an adjustment in July to reach that level, and also making some compression adjustments that are associated with that increase. We're also recommending that all other staff who don't receive increases as a part of those first 2 bullets get either a 5% increase or 2.5% increase if you've hired after December 31st of 2021. And we're still looking at and costing out some potential options for recruitment and retention incentives as well. In addition, and I won't run through all of these again, this information was presented on May 24th, but some of the other key investments in operations and staffing, and all these are in the general fund for next fiscal year. And again, I won't go through all these because we've shown this chart at the previous meeting as well, but happy to discuss any of them that council may want to go over. So moving on to some of the additional recommendations that Ms. Campbell mentioned that came out of the May 24th presentation. We really heard from council kind of three budgetary items that you all wanted us to follow up on and come back to you with additional recommendations on. The first was adjusting the minimum salary for all full-time employees to $36,816. The second was providing some additional funding for reparations. And the third was looking at funding as a part of the budget, either the urban forester position and or the urban forest plan. So our recommendations around those items. So for compensation, we would continue with the original recommendation that we outlined on, or that I discussed on a previous slide, with those adjustments happening in July as planned. But then in addition to that, we would, in January of 2023, make additional adjustments to bring the minimum salary for all full-time employees up to $36,816 and make additional compression adjustments as well as a part of that. The full year cost of that is about $600,000. Because we're implementing it halfway through the fiscal year, the cost next year will only be around $300,000. The second item that we're recommending is an increase in the budget funding for reparations. The original budget recommendation that we brought you all included $365,000 in new funding for reparations next year. We're recommending increasing that to $500,000 next year, and then making a change to essentially treat reparations funding each year much like we do the Housing Trust Fund right now. The Housing Trust Fund every year is a part of the base budget that we bring you all, and it's funded at $500,000. So staff will build the reparations funding into next year's budget. Bring that to you, obviously subject to financial feasibility and then ultimately approval by council. And that's a $135,000 additional cost. Just a quick summary of where that will leave us if you all approve our recommendation around reparations funding for next year. If you recall, there was an initial appropriation of $2.1 million about a year ago. We would add the $500,000 to it. We have so far spent or encumbered around $365,000. So that would leave, as of July 1, a balance of about $2.2 million in our reparations program. As you all know, the county, as a part of its proposed budget, is also looking at adding about $2 million to the reparations funding. And then we hope to, in the next 12 to 24 months, receive some additional funding through the community benefits table as well.
Tony, I think the community benefits table applications right now, if reach their final stages, are a little over $1 million, another $1 million.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And I think
yeah, it could be housing
trust fund
or reparations.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Okay, the third item we wanted to cover is the urban forest program. And staff is recommending that we move forward with adding the urban forester position next year, and then evaluate the funding the urban forest master plan, either through grants or in a upcoming budget cycle. And so that position, along with benefits and startup costs, is about $100,000 in next year's budget. So to summarize those three items from a cost perspective, wow, that went up a lot. It does have a weird sound right here where I'm at right now. I don't know how it sounds for the rest of you all, but so those three items would add up to about $543,000 in additional costs for next year's budget. So how are we going to fund those? So some potential funding strategies that staff looked at. The first thing we looked at was fund balance. As you all know, we, by policy, have to maintain 15% in our unassigned fund balance. So we kind of took a look at where we're projecting we're going to end this year and looked into whether we could appropriate some additional funding from fund balance to balance next year's budget. I think, as you all know, we've already included $400,000 in the proposed budget that we brought you on May 24th. But at this point, we're not recommending any additional fund balance appropriation. Even this late in the fiscal year, we still have a lot of uncertainty around where our revenues are going to land. We're also hearing that there's increased risk of recession in the next 12 to 24 months. And so we're not recommending any additional appropriation from fund balance. So the strategy we are recommending, and it's really a mix of two things. It's making some minor revenue adjustments to some of our own ongoing revenues, and that would fund the reparations addition of $135,000, and we identified about 5 general fund revenues that we can go in and increase based on current trends. And then to fund the rest of the additions, the salary adjustments as well as the urban forester position, we're recommending budgeting an additional $408,000 from the American Rescue Plan funding that we have available. So to summarize on the American Rescue Plan, where that would leave us, as you all know, we received $26 million through that program. On the left, you can see the items that we budgeted to date. And then on the right, we have the items that we're proposing funding for next year's budget, which total out to about $4.8 million, including the additional $400,000 that we're proposing tonight. And so that would leave an ARPA balance of about $1.7 million going into next fiscal year. And so to wrap up again, the key takeaways from that Ms. Campbell covered at the beginning of the presentation, and I think I'm going to turn it back over to her for one additional follow-up item before we open the public hearing.
Thank you, Tony. There was also a bit of discussion at our May 24th meeting about making operational adjustments to enhance community public safety responses. That item has been referred to the Public Safety Committee of City Council for further discussion.
Okay, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the slides or turn it back over to the mayor to start the public hearing.
Okay, sorry, our internet all went down up here, so we're getting restored. Okay, I'm gonna, so again, everyone, you have 3 minutes to speak. We do have one group that signed up to speak that is gonna cede their time to one speaker, but otherwise, everyone, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and well, when Maggie's done giving us internet, she'll time the speakers. I'm gonna try to tell you who's on deck, so you know if you're coming up. The first person signed up to speak is Chris Peterson, and then on deck is Perrin Dejong, which I hope I said that right.
Mayor, members, council, Chris Peterson, Merriman Avenue Business Group. First of all, we'd like to give a shout out to Councilwoman Kilgore. You know, our business group, first of all, we have nobody on any of your planning, zoning, anything. We are totally neglected. Ms. Kilgore is the only person on this council, and I'm including the city manager too, that even listens to business. And we pay most of the taxes. And you know what? We're getting fed up with it. And you know what? Of course, the 70-year-old party, y'all got your people back in again, you bunch of yes people, and y'all are going to sit there and vote yes on everything. Thank goodness some of you are leaving. Ms. Wislett, thank you. But going back, you talk about affordable jobs. That's the problem. It isn't affordable housing. When are you people going to realize you don't have affordable jobs? You have a bunch of rich people that have drove up prices. This is a little tourist town, and you are in bed with the Chamber of Commerce. What you ought to do is get a committee, go over there and say, hey, we're tired of the tourist jobs and the tourist money. Let's get together and bring some high-paying, good jobs in this town, and then you won't have to sit there and cram somebody in some crappy little apartment. You know, it's just not right. You're doing the same thing. You're creating ghettos on top of ghettos, and it shouldn't be that way. Every working person should have a piece of the rock. They should have their own house, dignity. Have you been to the store lately? It's going to be $5 a gallon July the 5th. Who can afford that? How about going to the grocery store? Do any of y'all go to the grocery store? I mean, have you seen the prices? It's outrageous. It's going to get worse. Interest rates are going up this week. You know what? Y'all are all living in pie sky. You really are. And you know what? I'll be glad when we get more independent council people like Miss Kilgore that question the system, that listen to the people, and you got $216 million. You blow $8 million on your transit. All you have to do, your transit is broken. I'm not saying we need transit for poor people, but what I'm saying, you don't blow $12 million and you get $3 million from the federal government. It's broken. Take that and redo it, reinvent it, and you'll save $4 million a year. Take that $4 million and you can buy land out here. Don't buy it in the city. It's too expensive. That's where you're getting killed. You think that you have to put apartments, affordable apartments downtown?
Thank you.
The average building downtown is $3 to $5 million. It's a joke.
The next speaker is Perrin DeJong, and then on deck, I think, is Don Chavez.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Perrin DeJong. I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Urban Forestry Commission or the Center for Biological Diversity. I'm here to speak for myself as a resident of Asheville and as an activist with a good deal of experience with these issues. So I'm here to call tonight for the inclusion of the urban forester as well as the urban forest master plan in the budget for the fiscal year 2022 and 2023. The city has repeatedly deferred action on these priorities for years now while advancing the pro-development agenda of the Open Space Amendment. In other words, the city has been trying to leap before it looks, but we should look before we leap. We should inventory the urban forest first, generate a plan for how to manage it and how to ensure that it can survive and thrive in the modern age in the 21st century under all of the population pressures that Asheville is under, and then staff that plan properly and fund it to ensure that that plan is not only in place, but will be implemented with success so that we can have the urban forest that we want to see far into the 21st century. Once we have that comprehensive plan in place, once we have the urban forester and whatever staff the urban forester needs to make that plan succeed, then we can set development policy in a way that is shaped around that plan, that comprehensive plan to ensure that the urban canopy can persist and serve this community in the ways that neighborhood resilience requires. So please include and fully fund both the urban forester and the urban forest master plan in the 2022-2023 budget. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a lame no clapping policy, sorry. So Don Chavez, you're speaking and you have a number of people ceding their time. If you're ceding, is there a Zoe, is it Hogel? Hoyle, that's a Y, okay. And Alan Excavates, yes, and then there was one other person, Amy Kemp. Oh, and sorry, and, okay, great, okay, thank you. So you'll have 10 minutes. Okay. And Maggie, somebody's paying attention to that. Okay, thank you. Wait, okay, hold on 1 second. Are you hot? Good or cold? Hot? Cold? Is it just me? I'm getting hot? Okay.
Hi, I'm Dawn Chavez. I'm the Executive Director of Asheville Greenworks. I'm also a member of the Urban Forestry Commission. I came here tonight, before when I was planning to come here tonight, I was under the impression that there wouldn't be funding for an urban forester recommended for the FY23 budget. So now I'm here to say thank you. And I'd like to first thank the City of Asheville's staff in Development Services, Public Works, and the Office of Sustainability for their recognition of the importance of hiring an urban forester and developing an urban forest master plan, especially the Director of Development Services, Ben Woody, who has been a huge help in submitting the budget request year after year. Thank you also to City Manager Deborah Campbell for including funding for an urban forester in the proposed budget and for listening to the public as they have advocated for this position over the past several years. Thank you. Thank you to Mayor Mannheimer and Vice Mayor Smith, as well as Councilwoman Whistler. These three city council members were on city council at the time that the city council voted unanimously to approve the proposal to hire an urban forester and develop an urban forest master plan in 2020. Thank you also to Councilwoman Roney for her ongoing support for an urban forester and as the council liaison for the Urban Forestry Commission. Having an urban forester on staff at the city is essential to improving and maintaining the healthy urban forest in Asheville and for achieving the goals laid out in the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan. As we saw in the tree canopy study completed in 2019, the city of Asheville lost 6.4% of its tree canopy over a 10-year period. That's the equivalent of 18,000 trees or almost 900 acres. The loss of trees has reduced the capacity of the urban forest to sequester nearly 6,000 tons of carbon. This amount of carbon is equivalent to approximately 2 million gallons of gasoline, enough to power 4,000 cars for a year. The total carbon storage of the canopy in 2008 was valued at $82 million. The 10 years of incremental canopy loss decreased carbon storage by nearly $7 million. The loss of tree canopy resulted in an average increase of 18 million gallons of stormwater control, or the equivalent of 27 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That loss makes a huge difference also in the land surface temperatures that we experience, especially on hot days like we have now. Communities with less tree cover are subjected to dangerously high temperatures that are exacerbated by the amount of concrete and asphalt in those neighborhoods. Those communities are often where the most vulnerable of our residents live, as shown on the city's climate justice map. An urban forester will enhance staff capacity and professional expertise to implement the Tree Canopy Protection Ordinance Amendment, disperse fee and lieu funds, provide cross-departmental coordination, and effectively engage community partners. The economic savings that the city will realize as a result of hiring an urban forester will more than pay for the position in years to come. Having the urban forester position included in the city's proposed budget is the result of years of work by all the members, past and present, of the Urban Forestry Commission and Greenworks Tree Protection Task Force. Other achievements spurred by the efforts of the Urban Forestry Commission and citizen activists include the amendments to the Tree Canopy Protection Ordinance made in September 2020 and the adoption of a zero net loss canopy goal by the City Council in January 21. Hiring an urban forester is a great step in developing a comprehensive urban forestry program for the city of Asheville, but it's not the last step. We still have a ways to go to achieve a healthy, equitable urban forest in Asheville and earn Asheville's reputation as a green city. Greenworks is looking forward to working with an urban forester to leverage private funding for projects, for training opportunities, and for the development of an urban forest master plan. I strongly encourage the City Council to approve the proposed budget on June 28th. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn, and thank you for all your work in our community. Okay, the next person signed up to speak is Victoria Estes, and Philip Cooper, you are on deck.
Esther, let me just start by saying, how dare you get up here and give a speech about equity and people deserving safe homes in Asheville, and even mention the Stonewall uprisings as a heroic act while you continuously perpetuate harm to our houseless community, and you continuously are fighting to allocate more funding to the police. That's some hypocritical lip service if I ever heard any. Anyways, since May 24th, there's been 67 mass shootings in the U.S. This past weekend was the 4th consecutive weekend that came with waves of multiple mass shootings, leaving many dead and more injured. The massacre at the Texas elementary school that left 19 dead is still weighing heavily on all of our hearts. And not one of these shootings was prevented by police. We have police in every school in the country, in the county, and the country, and not one has prevented these needless deaths. In fact, during the shooting in Texas, officers stood by for hours and arrested and assaulted parents who tried to save their children. A not so fun fact, there has been more children that have died in school shootings than police that have died in active duty. So why are there places like our little city of Asheville that are continuing to pump money into outdated, racist, oppressive police forces? If there is one thing that is inherently clear here, it is that police do not keep us safe. They do not prevent crimes. They show up to respond afterwards. They create crime in our communities by over-policing the underprivileged and continuing the prison industrial complex revolving door that keeps poor folks in jail for petty crimes, instead of rehabilitating those who need it, like the broken narrative wishes to portray. In fact, most of the people in our prison systems are not murderers or sex offenders. They're simply people who face lives of poverty and oppression, who had to commit crimes in order to survive. We have to stop putting our money into police, and we must instead invest in our communities. We need free mental health and physical health resources. We need emotional literacy courses in all of our schools. We need affordable housing and jobs that pay people true living wages. If we want to truly address the problem and prevent crime, we have to start with taking care of each other so that crime becomes virtually obsolete, not criminalizing and punishing people, driving them farther into destitution. And while I still have you here, let's talk about Asheville's most hated, the Boys in Blue, and how they carried out an investigation last Christmas that ended up with 15 people facing felony charges, simply for protesting people's right to live. Not only did they paint these Asheville residents as rowdy out-of-towners, they charged them with felonies that will follow them throughout the rest of their lives, simply for feeding and providing wind shelters to houseless people. They claimed that the art that was left in Aston Park was garbage. But it wasn't. It was a cry to the deaf ears of our city to stop destroying lives and to address the houseless crisis with humanity and compassion, instead of needlessly destroying people's meager means of living that this city has created by continuously pandering to tourism and rich developers. And of course, the city's response has been to listen to the cops and work together to try and criminalize mutual aid, a course of action that is absolutely reprehensible. You as city officials need to leverage your power, drop the charges against those facing felonies, and work to protect the rights of all members of this city.
The next person signed up to speak is Philip Cooper, and then followed by Nina Tovish.
Good evening. My name is Philip Cooper, and I am the chair of the board at Just Economics of Western North Carolina. And on behalf of Just Economics, who fights for living wages for people, I want to say thank you for the recommendation. I've seen that change in the number from, 17 to 1770. So I do want to say thank you. And our living wage rate is based on the cost of housing. And by continuing to maintain a living wage floor, you demonstrate the council's understanding of addressing affordability. As an organization, we believe that all workers deserve to be valued and should at least make enough to put a roof over their head and food on their table, and that our tax dollars should go to support living wages. Thank you for your service. I can only imagine how it is to be sitting in the seat that you are in. You probably got a target on your back no matter what you decide. But I will say that living wages are important. Power to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. So Nina Tovish, and then Moses Walio Helmling.
Good evening again. There's a famous saying in a rather popular book, where your treasure is, there will be your heart also. So my question tonight is public transit a core service? I'd like to share with you a little sampling of messages I received via text from ART in the month of May. The late night service provided on Route N1 on Fridays and Saturdays will be discontinued. Due to driver shortages, the N3 and W6 routes will only run once per hour. Due to driver shortages, the N1, N2, and S4 will miss trips today. The S4 will miss the 6:30 and 8 p.m. trips. The N1 will miss the 7 p.m. trip. The N2 will miss the 8:30 p.m. trip. We apologize for the inconvenience. Due to continued driver shortages, routes S2, W5, and N3 will have missed trips. On Saturday, the last S2 trip will be at 7:30 p.m. The last W5 trip will be at 7 p.m. The N3 will miss the 8:45 and 9:10 p.m. trip. Thank you for your patience. Due to continued driver shortages, routes WE2 and 170 will have missed trips this Sunday. WE2 will not run after 4:20 p.m. This 170 will not run after 1:10 p.m. Thank you for your patience. Routes N1, N2, and S4 will have missed trips today, 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. N1 will not run 5 p.m., 6:30 p.m., 8 p.m. S4 will not run 5:30 p.m., 8:30 p.m. N2 will not run. Thank you for your patience. When making a budget allocation, we have to ask who is harmed and who is helped. We're seeing driver shortages, likely only solved by meaningfully increased driver pay. We're seeing service lapses instead of the promised service expansion. Last year, cars got a free ride for parking due to a truly unconscionable, protracted lapse in collecting public parking fees. And in a cruelly ironic twist, transit riders are suffering the consequences, even as the city uses valuable ARPA funds to make up a shortfall, but not expand the budget. Council has said that equity is an important value. Where is the equity here? Who are you asking again and again for their patience?
Okay, next person signed up to speak is Moses, and I hope I'm saying the last name right, Walio Helmling. You're looking at me, I'm saying it wrong, okay. Phyllis Stiles, I'm not clear, do you still want to speak? Are you still here? Not here, okay. Greenleaf Clark, you are on deck.
You said it correctly, Walio Helmling. I'm just coming here to propose an idea, really, to make Asheville fun again, really. So the old Fun Depot, it's actually occupied right now, but I feel like this idea will bring, like I said, fun to Asheville, and I want to ask y'all for a proposal to try to work with me to make it into like a water park. And I already started working with one of the city council members, and which is in process on doing that. And I actually already wrote a proposal to y'all. So I was just, just bring the word out again. So that was just what I was, any questions, I'm willing to answer. And yeah. Any questions?
You sent an email to us?
No. Yeah. Lenore, Lenore Jones, she sent an email to y'all.
Did you get it? Yeah, please send it to us because I'd like to connect you with someone.
Oh, send it to it again? Okay. And one of the reasons it would be good is because all the water parks or fun stuff is out of Buncombe County. The closest water park is Sevierville or Splash Country in Tennessee. All those are in Tennessee. And I've noticed a lot of fun stuff has been taken away since the pandemic. So it's just been a lot of tourist attractions, but that's for bars, the Biltmore House, the mountains, hiking and everything, but we just kind of went away from the kids. So like I just bringing that idea, back with some fun, and it can bring back to the city from that attraction. Because there's not one in the western area, so it's going to bring people in from other counties, cities, even states. So in the long run, it can help the city out in whatever we need funding in. And I just feel like something like that would complete the city with what we already have with the historic sites and all this and that, something fun, bring that back again, and that's all really. So,
Thank you. Greenleaf Clark, and then Jeffrey Cristofaro is next.
Two years ago, last week, you made some conspicuous, empty promises. At Deborah Campbell's direct orders, your mercenaries drenched the city in toxic tear gas, broke skulls, severed arteries. I had to deal with them myself. Slashed and gassed medic supplies meant to keep those people alive, and assaulted the very medics there to actually help. And to this day, there has been zero accountability. And instead of holding Deborah Campbell or David Zach or any of the faceless Gestapo who carried out their orders accountable, you made empty promises. In our rage at the dehumanizing, racist lynching of not just George Floyd, but of our community member right here in Asheville, Jerry Williams, in our rage, we demanded that you stop incentivizing those same murderers who still occupy our streets. And instead of listening, you made more empty promises. 2 years ago, you attempted to pacify the people of the city with hollow words, construing promises of reimagining public safety. Your actions have been speaking far louder, and this is no reimagining. This proposed budget is just one more clear action at the scale of $1.6 million more towards funding and emboldening the white supremacist mob occupying our streets and terrorizing the people of the city. You promised change. In total, the cops will be sitting on nearly $32 million next year if you pass this, that you could be using to make actual change. All this talk of all these resources we need to fund, the money's there. 2 years later, it's gone far, far worse by your hands. And we know exactly whose promises remain unfulfilled and empty. Emptier than my friend Freddie's apartment after they died in January, murdered by policy failure. Emptier than the hole in our hearts from when Virginia died last week, murdered by policy failure. And those are the people I knew personally, murdered by policy failure this past year. What about every single person who's been murdered by Buncombe County Detention Facility? Every death, every person locked in those cages because of your policies is on your hands. Every person who dies on those streets because of your policy is on your hands, every single one. Supposedly, according to your colonizer power structure, you have a mandate to keep us safe. We are here, we have been here telling you how to do that. Provide or at least allow sanctuary camping. Provide or at least allow access to safe consumption sites. At least allow people to live without the fear of being murdered by police. The cops don't keep us safe, they never have and they never will, and we will never trust them to do so. Anyone with the slightest shred of doubt in their mind should have clarity now after seeing their incompetence on display in Uvalde. More than incompetence, they actively handcuffed a mother trying to prevent her from trying to keep her own children safe. You know, instead of listening to the people who know what they're talking about, begging you to listen and let us keep ourselves safe, you continue to fund the very soldiers terrorizing this community. You continue to give them carte blanche to militarize in our streets. The Asheville police, as you call them, are hell-bent on ruining the lives of anyone who actually stands up for human rights in this community to fund them.
Thank you. Jeffrey De Christopher. Thank you for saying. And then Will Hornaday is on deck.
As a representative of the local chapters of Sunrise Movement, Extinction Rebellion, Western North Carolina, and Reject Raytheon, I must add an ecological angle, which is very pressing. Asheville, like the rest of Western North Carolina, is not exempt from the current climate change and extinction crisis that we are facing. To heap insult upon injury, the Asheville City Council did go ahead with a plan to approve the construction of the Pratt & Whitney plant. Although this was designed to give jobs, it also led to the stripping of 27.5 acres of land needed to combat climate change. Asheville has already suffered several ecological disasters. There was a huge drought in 2016, compounded by fires at Lake Lure. There was also flooding in 2018, which went as far as Greenville, in which 2 people of WLOS lost their lives. By threatening to clear land in order to make way for businesses that actually contribute to the war effort, we are losing the war against climate change and the extinction crisis. That cannot be allowed to happen. We are not independent of dependency on nature. We coexist with nature. We are a species that is symbiotic with the survival of Mother Nature. Therefore, I propose that instead of financing further security, which has proven to be useless and which has only compounded problems of poverty, of prejudices against race, and even the LGBT community, and for that matter, to which I will add the category of disabilities, of which I am included, I hereby propose that proper funding be allocated to reserving any land that has not been cleared for nature reserves, as well as a special grant to be given to the Western North Carolina Nature Center to expand its space to include habitats for certain species, whether indigenous or foreign, that are currently on the red list of the International Union of Conservation for Nature. We cannot suffer further losses. What we are facing is not just a regional crisis, it is a national crisis and an international crisis as well. It affects every one of us, and if it affects every one of us, by sending funding to the wrong departments, we also jeopardize our survival in terms of environmental sustainability and the tourist and residents living.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Will Hornaday and then Emma Hutchins.
I wanted to speak about the urban forester. I'm glad to see that that's moving forward. Thank you, Mr. McDowell and Ms. Campbell for your work on this. And I can't say it any better or anywhere near as well as Perrin and Dawn did. So I didn't, that's all I have to say. I'm really glad this is going forward, and I'm looking forward to stronger stormwater protections to follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Emma Hutchins and then Laura McPherson.
Hello, Council. My name is Emma Hutchins. I've lived in the Asheville area I've lived in Asheville proper for over 12 years now. I'd like to start by offering my support for the City of Asheville upholding its own living wage policy by keeping pace with Buncombe County living wage rates. And I urge you not to wait until January to adjust all employees to a living wage. I wanted to take a second to remind the public and council that a living wage is the bare minimum that an individual can earn and be able to afford their basic needs without public or private assistance. So that means it's not enough to support a dependent, like a child, or certainly more than one child. It's also not enough money to save or to experience leisure. The living wage rate is the bare minimum that you need to make to not live in poverty. Based on the presentation that we just saw, a city staff person making less than $41,150 per year won't be able to afford to live in affordable housing at an 80% area median income. Next, I'd like to urge council to set aside a percentage of the annual budget for reparations. I believe that allocating funds in this way is one of the only ways that Asheville can deepen its commitment to reparations and take responsibility for seeing that funding into the future. I would also like to urge council to actually diversify public safety response instead of continuing to pour resources into the Asheville Police Department. We need paramedicine, community paramedicine, mental health resources that are not housed within APD. We need to address issues related to transit, climate change, and food security because these issues also mean safety. It's discouraging to hear the city talk about reimagining public safety while continuing to just fund business as usual. The Asheville Police Department has seen its budget increase every year, with diminishing outcomes, perpetually open positions, and a growing list of things that officers will not respond to. Police do not keep crime from happening, they only respond. Safety is a much bigger picture. And I believe that Asheville deserves a bigger picture of public safety, and that those funds belong in community investment rather than in more policing. I'm concerned about the city's use of ARPA funding to balance the budget. Those funds should be allocated for community pandemic recovery and be placed within the city. The city should not be in competition with the community for resources. And lastly, I do want to say that I wish that this public hearing happened earlier in the year. I feel that many of us probably feel the way that I'm feeling, which is that what I have to say today will have very little actual bearing on the budget decision. I wish that I would have had a chance to say something back in March before so many decisions had already been made. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura McPherson and then Sharon Summerall.
I'm Laura McPherson. I'm the secretary of and on the executive committee of the East End Valley Street Neighborhood Association. I'm speaking on their behalf. For once, instead of coming to yell at you, we are here to thank you profusely. We thank the City Council for including the $2.5 million of ARPA funds for reinstalling the track at Memorial Field. We look forward to running the first lap around it with you during the inauguration, or at least walking. We'd also like to thank the City Council, this I think is Deborah, for finally including funds, the $245,000 in the FY23 budget, to moving the parks and rec vehicles out of Mountainside Park and cleaning up our neighborhood, basically, after 6 years of our advocacy. We emphasize that we hope to use some of those funds or some of the ARPA funds from Mountainside or bond funds to clean up the trash that is left once the trucks leave, and to maybe lay turf or otherwise integrate that land back into Mountainside Park, please, and don't just leave the hole sitting there. We encourage you to retain these amounts in full, again, with great thanks and gratitude as the budget process continues. A last note, we are very pleased that both Mountainside Park and Memorial Stadium are being retained by the Parks and Rec Department, even as McCormick Field is moved to the new Department of Entertainment, I guess it's called. We emphasize, we hope this means that these remain neighborhood facilities for use by residents in the city and are not turned into tourist attractions. Thank you so much. Again, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, Sharon Summerall and then Steve Rasmussen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sharon Summerall, and I'm a member of the Urban Forestry Commission. Thank you, Mayor and Council and Ms. Campbell, for including urban forester in the fiscal year 2023 budget. Quite a surprise. Thank you. Especially thank you to our council liaison, Ms. Roney, for continued support and understanding the importance of an urban forester. I need to thank Director of Development Services, Ben Woody, who has guided us in the submitting budget requests year after year, and for also understanding why the city needs an urban forester. And thank you to the citizens of Asheville, especially the Tree Protection Task Force and Greenworks, and knowing what is important for our community. UFC is a good example of why we need to keep our boards and commissions, to hear the voices of the community and to implement those voices into action. Thanks again.
Thank you. And after Steve Rasmussen is Grace Barron Martinez.
Hi, my name is Steve Rasmussen. I'm a member of the Tree Protection Task Force. I'm pleased to see that the city staff has realized that the salary of an urban forester easily qualifies for funding under the rules of the American Rescue Plan Act. That's because managing and restoring our severely threatened urban tree canopy will promote the improved health and safety outcomes the plan calls for, including not just parks and green spaces, but also protection from the dangerous rise in urban heat island effect and stormwater flooding that, I feel it's important to point out, the city's own sponsored studies have found are directly tied to deforestation caused by the dense infill development that the city has pursued with too little care or attention to its environmental consequences. These consequences have afflicted low-income, minority-majority neighborhoods worst because of historical maximum asphalt and concrete, zero green space development patterns that focus on quantity and profit for developers and landowners rather than quality and health for residents, which were traditionally, if unjustly, reserved for wealthier, lower-density suburbs. But now, climate change consequences are afflicting gentrifying middle-income neighborhoods too, thanks to the tight grip development and real estate lobbyists have on most of our state and some of our local politicians. Here's the rarely acknowledged truth. Together, they've created our affordable housing crisis by refusing to allow reasonable municipal regulation and control of housing rents or prices. And now they're cynically taking advantage of that crisis by claiming the only way to solve it is to loosen and repeal zoning and environmental restrictions so that developers can build on every undeveloped square inch without being held to account for the climate disaster that deregulated density is doing so much to create in places like Asheville. And that's on top of the gentrification and neighborhood property tax and price rises that 2 council members alluded to in the previous hearing. Same cause. To help rectify this short-sightedness, we desperately need the Urban Forest Master Plan that the city's Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan calls for, and that the Urban Forestry Commission has repeatedly recommended. And at the very least, for the sake of reinforcing neighborhood resiliency, we need to hire an urban forester to oversee the tree protection ordinance that our city did manage to pass after years of being deceived into believing that we couldn't. The federal government is giving us the funds. Put the urban forester position into your budget, please. Thank you.
And just to be clear, it is in the budget.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was misquoted.
Sorry, okay, I just wanted to make sure, all right.
Yeah.
Thanks. After Grace Barron Martinez is Patrick Gilbert.
Good evening, City Council. As you're well aware, I have deep concern about our city's so-called reimagining of public safety. Tonight, you are here to receive comment from the public about the budget, and tonight is 112 days since City Council started the budgeting process, yet just 14 days before you make a final vote. You've already decided what the priorities are, revised the budget multiple times, and even made some last-minute changes. I've already pointed out time and time again how nothing has changed in the way you look at safety. You've refused to diversify your response strategies and give alternative strategies that meet the needs of the community, even as the crises of the community compounds. We continue to go through these processes and hire consultants to gather data about our city and to engage with the public. And yet the most fundamental level of engagement goes unused. You can meet people where they're at with these meetings in the community and allow remote participation like you grant to other council members. We can provide childcare, transportation, and even meet at different times of day to make it more accommodating. You did not include us. You did not include the immune-compromised person who can't attend this meeting while COVID spreads like wildfire through our community. You didn't include the parent who is at home caring for their 3 kids, the person who was arrested by the officers that loom over this very room, the person who has the front desk right now of one of your hotels serving your tourists, the bartender who is pouring another round, the bus driver who is trying to get the community where it's going while you're here cutting their department's budget, the musicians singing in your streets, the mission hospital worker who is trying to keep people alive while they don't have enough staff, the worker who is cleaning up a hotel room after a bachelorette party. The person whose only place to call home was destroyed by your police, your Parks and Rec department, and your privately contracted biohazard company, BioOne, when it was bulldozed and thrown in the trash last week. I have some troubling news for you. Even police can't incarcerate, arrest, and tear gas their way out of the problems and the trauma that this city is facing. We know the comments that we make tonight won't meaningfully change the $30.1 million for your short-staffed police department. And the only time you came even close to thinking about our input was when you came up with your 30-60-90 plan, otherwise known as a delay tactic during the unending protests in your streets. And even then, you managed to rebrand, to tear down a racist monument that should have been gone long ago and still maintain the status quo. I appreciate the increase in funding for reparations in this budget, but with the ongoing harm your police inflict, combined with the concerns I heard from Councilwoman Smith tonight about gentrification and the displacement of the ever-dwindling Black community, I'm concerned it just won't be enough to backpedal through the ongoing damage. Last year, in fact, you had to be sued to even allow the public to hear the council retreat that no members of the public were even allowed to participate in. And tonight, for the second city council meeting in a row, you've allowed city council to participate remotely while the members of the public have been granted no such opportunity.
Thank you. Patrick Gilbert and then Rick Freeman. Okay, thank you. Rick Freeman. Elsa Enstrom is on deck.
My name is Rick Freeman. I'm the president of the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods. As most of you know, I've been here before. And once again, I'm here to thank rather than to debate. I'd like to thank all the council members, city staff, all the people who have worked hard to finally include an urban forester in this plan. And this conversation is just to reinforce that should there be any pressures as the budget closes. The board of directors for CAN, which represents 22 city neighborhoods, recently voted unanimously support funding for an urban forester. One of the most cost-effective approaches to ensuring a healthy balance to development of our neighborhoods is through comprehensive urban forest management practices. Developing and maintaining a vibrant green infrastructure, including an urban forest program, is not only essential to the healthy environment of neighborhoods, it also increases property values and contributes to the overall well-being of neighborhood residents. You, the City Council, made neighborhood resilience part of your priorities for Asheville. Accomplishing this piece of neighborhood resilience requires professional management in the form of an urban forester who has the technical training and experiences to pull together policies and planning for promoting a healthy urban forest and a green infrastructure vital to the sustainability of our neighborhoods and our city. As envisioned in Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan, this not only includes development designs and uses, but also incorporating those planning techniques with a green infrastructure and a healthy quality of life that will define the Asheville for the future. Asheville is the only major city in North Carolina without an urban forester. This request also meets another council priority, improved and expanded core services. Currently, there is no staff person who can fulfill the role of an urban forester. A city arborist only has the expertise to deal with individual trees, while an urban forester has the professional ability to view trees, green space, and climate resiliency more holistically. If neighborhood resilience is truly a major prerogative, you want to see sustainable, affordable housing, ensuring a healthy urban forest, a sustainable green infrastructure, and a better quality of life through comprehensive urban forest management is a clear and easy choice. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your service to the city.
Thank you. Elsa Enstrom, and the last person we have signed up to speak under the budget is Faith, and I think it's Rhyme. Hope I got that right.
First, I'd like to thank those who spoke on the budget and pointed out its shortcomings. And then I would like to start by saying that we need to stop acting like the city is broke. We are a tourist attraction. How much money does this city make? We just have to have the guts to know where to go to get it. We need to defund the police. We need to, instead of reimagining, we need to reconstruct public safety. We need to work directly with community groups, as Councilwoman Roney, mentioned in the last meeting that I was at. We need to talk to those groups, see what they need, see what the people in our community needs. Like what Grace said, go out in the community and listen to the people, listen to what they want. Retraining the police is not going to fix our problems. And there is plenty of data to back that up. And moving on, all city employees deserve a living wage now. And honestly, higher than just bare living wage. I make living wage, and I am just getting by. I've owned my house for 6 years, and I am still just getting by. It is painfully stressful to exist in this city right now on a living wage salary. And, you know, housing has really become an issue. And if we were to work harder to stabilize housing, living wage wouldn't be as high as it is right now. We have one of the worst housing markets in the country. I believe we're in the top 5 worst housing markets in the country. That's what I heard somewhere, which is ridiculous. We're a city of what, 200,000 people? I'm sort of spitballing here, but I mean, okay, 93. Metropolitan area, though, if you're considering the metropolitan area, we shouldn't have the type of housing market we have. And, you know, watching you guys talk about affordable housing and these percentages and all of this, and, oh, this many units are going to be quote unquote affordable, but by the percentage of what is considered not affordable. So in reality, it's still not affordable. It's not affordable for somebody who's living on disability, who's living on $10,000 a year disability. That's what somebody I know is living on. So just think about these things and, you know, think about them real hard.
Thank you. And Faith Rem.
Hi, Mayor Manheimer and council people. I got a random message yesterday that, you know, there was a public hearing and people were encouraged to come and speak to advocate for reallocation of some of the police funding that's being proposed. And there have been times in my almost 18 years in Asheville now, as a community member on South French Broad, there have been times that I've been very active in the community. And these past few years, I've not shown up to a council meeting and have not been, you know, had my finger on the pulse of what's happening. I do know that the city has made efforts to use funding through emergency solutions grants and other COVID-related funding to use that well, and yet the programs that are created are not effective. They, you know, there's not capacity to provide some of the services and solutions that are needed in meeting the needs of the community's most vulnerable residents. Some of you all may know or may not that I've worked you know, pretty deep in the nonprofit sector within Asheville, you know, as a professional and then also as a volunteer, and, you know, have seen that, you know, what we're doing isn't working clearly, as, you know, rates of, you know, all of the horrible things, whether it's, you know, I'm not going to give a list, you know what the things are, is getting worse. And I think that it will continue to get worse. And I'd like to encourage, you know, considering, you know, holding back some of that police funding and looking at ways that, you know, programs that, you know, can contribute to community safety in a more community-rooted way. And I know that there are pilots that have been launched, and there are programs that funding has been, you know, given over to that haven't gone as planned. And, you know, to look at ways that funding can be used to, you know, meet immediate needs, contribute to long-term community health development and sustainability, but also build capacity and build community responsibility and relationships so that people are able to protect their own communities and aren't relying on police intervention. And I do want to acknowledge that, just a brief story, I became aware of a community member, a female, who, oh, thank you all. I appreciate it. Yeah. Have a good evening.
Sorry. Okay, that concludes the number of folks that have signed up to speak under public comment under the budget. Again, we don't vote on this, on the budget tonight. We will vote on it at our next meeting. Ooh, are we okay?
Are we able to ask a clarifying question about the presentation before we move on?
Yes, certainly.
When I think about our budget, I'll reiterate that I'm I'm still thinking about the same as last year. It's not just what we do, but it's how we do it. How do we fund the budget that we present to the public? I'm still waiting for an answer on what would the impact be if we capped salary increases at $5,000. Could we essentially provide living wages immediately for our staff? Because we say we care about affordable housing, but we're not doing that for our lowest paid staff, not July 1. Additionally, if we continue to dip into the ARPA funds, I have a clarifying question about what have we committed to in the second tranche of funding for ARPA funds that we are removing our commitment from? Because through those months of processes, we identified some very specific needs for what we committed to as being an equitable recovery. And my understanding was that emergency shelter was part of that. So do we still have, with this budget, the funds earmarked for the commitments we made as a partner with the county and with Dogwood Health Trust to address the needs that we have for our unhoused neighbors and for our neighborhoods that need that emergency shelter response?
I asked the same question. We, in our ARPA funds, we had, in my mind, we had set aside a lump sum of money we held back. We have been chipping away at that, funding various things, and we originally set aside $3 million with the thinking that the city was going to partner with Dogwood and the county in the purchase of the Ramada Inn for a high-access shelter. That has not happened, and of course, we've assigned that purchase contract. It's now going to be permanent supportive housing. But I think it's very important that the city remain committed to participating in the creation and bringing online a high-access shelter. I did speak with the county commissioners yesterday with the chairman to let him know that we were going to be presenting a budget tonight where he would see, if they were watching, that we have a reduction in the amount of ARPA funds that are left over. To make clear to them, at least personally, I would like to see us continue to move forward with that commitment. I don't know what that'll look like because that set aside was based on the purchase of the Ramada being around $9 million, and that's obviously not going to happen. And some things have changed since then. The county has received a significant amount of opioid funding. We thought at that time we were going to be receiving a significant amount. We're not nearly very much at all compared to the county. So, but I wanted to make sure that we continued to indicate a potential for a strong partnership, not knowing exactly where this council will fall when it finally comes time to vote on that after we get our study back that's underway. So anyway, I share that concern because I would like to see the city move ahead with the high access shelter in partnership with whoever it takes to make that happen. Not necessarily, we have a lot of details to iron out. How would that be housed and who would run it and those sorts of things, and where would it be located, of course, but just the concept, still committed to the concept.
And the second part is that if we continue to dip into the ARPA funds and perpetuate the scarcity narrative with competition with our community partners, and we balance a budget on the ARPA funds that won't be here next year, are we potentially setting up our community for another property tax increase to be able to balance next year's budget? And are we prepared to mitigate the property tax impact on our historic Black neighborhoods and our renters, including residential and business renters? Because that's what it looks like, a potential for me. And so I'm just holding those thoughts in mind as we prepare for the vote in a couple weeks. Thank you.
I do think we need to be very careful about funding any recurring costs with one-time funding. I mean, obviously, if you only have one-time funding and you're funding recurring expenses that you're going to see the next year and the next year and the next year, you need to have that recurring revenue to be able to match it. And I think we've seen an atrophy, not this full council, but we've definitely seen an atrophy in our budget before in past years where sales tax during the Great Recession, those numbers really dropped. And what happened, instead of raising taxes, was we went to our departments and said, make cuts, cut 10% across the board. And that's generally speaking at least from my experience, what's had to happen in the past. So I do think, I feel confident in what our financial planners have put together here, it is predicated on some level of continued growth. It is. And if something were, if we don't, I'm not the kind of growth we've seen in the last year or two, but it is predicated on a continued somewhat strong growth. And if that doesn't happen, we're going to have to be prepared to make difficult decisions to address that. I think that's a very important issue.
I'll just layer in something that I learned. This is only my second budget cycle, second year on council. I was rather amazed at the impact of increased sales tax revenue for us. It allowed us to do more things than we thought we would be able to do. And it's not lost on me that that increased revenue is often related to tourism. And I know that's not always a loved topic in this community, but there is a correlation. And I know as we were, in the recent months, as we were asking our finance director, well, what was 3 months ago sales tax, and did we make more than we thought, and can we spend it? And there's just some of that in play. And I appreciate this conversation we're having, but I'd also want the community to understand that it's not just property taxes. The sales tax revenue is a big thing as well. And it's in the presentations, and I don't actually know the total offhand, but I just wanted to share that a little bit too, that the sales tax revenue did provide us the opportunity to meet more needs.
Thanks. Any other comments before we conclude this portion of our agenda?
What we didn't hear today was a follow-up from our check-in agenda. I understand it's legally feasible that we can have a policy similar to our general fund balance policy, so that we not only set reparations funding into the budget, but set it at a percentage so that it can grow exponentially as the city's budget grows. And if it is legally feasible, what would be the next step for that to come forward to council? I imagine it could go to planning and economic development or finance or governance, something, but it should probably go to a subcommittee first.
Let me first respond to that by saying that there are, as you said, there's no legal restriction from the council adopting a budgetary allocation based upon a percentage rather than a dollar amount. Nor is there any legal limitation on setting a policy guideline that you would like that funding stream to continue into the future. An example of this would be our housing trust fund that we continue to fund at a specific amount year after year. It's not a percentage, but it is a dollar amount. The limitations kick in legally when the council, as an ongoing legal entity, meaning that city council remains a going concern even though its members will change over time, when any particular iteration of the council attempts to legislate away its future policy discretion. You can enter into contracts that will proceed into the future, and future iterations of council will be bound by that. But budgetary items are the prime example of council setting policy. Therefore, what you will often hear is that existing councils cannot bind future councils. That's an oversimplification of the legal principle. But you will be limited to say that this council can specifically bind future councils to a specific allocation, whether it's based upon a percentage or a dollar amount. But you can certainly set as a goal to try to achieve, or a policy decision that, recognizing you can have that change in the future, that you will continue to do this. So there are no limitations on the proposal, only that future councils will have the same legislative authority to alter that you have to set it.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Based on what Councilwoman Roney brought up, I'm just wondering where it would go committee-wise if we wanted to think about percentages, to decide if a percentage of our budget would be the way this council wants to go, and then how much, what percentage we would decide.
I'm on finance. It
I
seems
would
like
be
finance.
interested in seeing what that process looks like.
Okay, anything else? Okay. Boards and commissions. All right, so we're finished with our budget hearing. We do not vote on this again tonight. We will vote on it at the next meeting. on June 28th. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the Vice Mayor for boards and commissions.
All right. The Boards and Commissions Committee met earlier this morning, and we have a couple of recommendations to make today. The African American Heritage Commission, the committee recommends the appointment of Diamond Sloan Couch to the African American Heritage Committee. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I'll have to do a roll call vote for approval. Turner?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Whistler?
Aye.
Kilgore?
Aye.
Roney?
Aye.
Mosley?
Aye.
Motion carries. Airport Authority, the committee recommends the reappointment of Brad Galbraith. Can I get a second?
Second, Kilgore.
All right, roll call vote for approval. Turner?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Whistler?
Aye.
Kilgore?
Aye.
Roney?
Aye.
Mosley?
Aye.
Motion carries. For the Asheville Buncombe Air Quality Agency, the committee recommends the reappointment of Joe Starro. Can I get a second?
Second, Kilgore.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote for approval. Turner?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Whistler?
Aye.
Kilgore?
Aye.
Roney?
Aye.
Mosley?
Aye.
Kilgore.
All right, the Audit Committee, no applications were received, so the clerk's office will re-advertise for that vacancy. Civic Center Commission, the committee recommends the reappointment of Yvonne Cook Riley.
This is Cam, second.
All right, roll call vote. Turner?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Whistler?
Aye.
Kilgore?
Aye.
Roney?
Aye.
Mosley?
Aye.
Motion carries. Historic Resources Commission, the board, the committee recommends the reappointment of Sarah Grosh. The clerk's office will continue to advertise for the 2 vacant seats. Is there a second?
Sage, I'll second.
All right, Sage, what's your vote?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Whistler?
Aye.
Kilgore?
Aye.
Roney?
Aye.
Mosley? Mosley? Councilwoman Mosley, can you hear us? All right, motion carries. Maybe somebody can call her.
Yeah,
We can get
I'll
her
call.
in. All right, I'll move forward. Human Relations Commission of Asheville, the committee recommends the reappointment of Brandon Oliver and Harvey Dean Harold, and the appointment of Alma Atkins and Christopher Boyd. The clerk's office will continue to advertise for the remaining seat. Is there a second?
This is Kim, second.
All right, roll call vote for approval. Turner?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Whistler?
Aye.
Kilgore?
Aye.
Roney?
Aye.
Mosley?
No response, so keep going.
All right. Multimodal Transportation Commission, the board. Hold on, I think we have something.
That was her.
All right, for the Multimodal Transportation Commission, the committee recommends the reappointment of Randy Warren. Is there a second?
It's Gwen, second.
All right, roll call vote. Turner?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Whistler?
Aye.
Kilgore?
Aye.
Roney?
Aye.
Mosley?
Aye.
There you go. Okay. The Neighborhood Advisory Committee, the committee recommends the reappointment of Elizabeth Lycus Werrell, and she'll represent the at-large seat, and the appointment of Elise Martyr for the at-large seat on the
Sage, I'll-
Neighborhood.
Sorry,
before-
Sage, I'll second.
All right, roll call vote. Turner?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Mayor?
Aye.
Whistler?
Aye.
Kilgore?
Aye.
Roney?
Aye.
Mosley?
Aye.
Motion carries. And for the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee, Emily Ball actually came in and she wanted to lift the pause that they requested for appointment. They're restructuring the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee to have more representation from different sectors in our homelessness system. So that is being lifted, and because the restructure is restructuring process is complete. So she also, after giving that update, they gave us a recommendation that came from their nomination committee. They have a nomination committee as well with their restructuring. So they recommend the appointment of Jessica Suffolk. Is there a second for the appointment of Jessica Suffolk?
This is Kim, and I'll second, as well as noting that this will fill the role of a school liaison, an organization with the Asheville City Schools that works with our unhoused youth.
And this is the first time we've had that position. So first time we had a person on our, in our continuum of care that represents McKinney-Vento population. Can I get a second?
I'll second. Sage?
All right, for a roll call vote, Turner.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Mayor.
Aye.
Whistler. Aye. Kilgore.
Aye.
Roney.
Aye.
Mosley.
Aye.
All right, that concludes my turn.
If I could provide some clarification, I believe we have had Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee members that do work with our McKinney-Vento youth, but we haven't yet had a representative from the Asheville City Schools or Buncombe County Schools organizations.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for the clarity.
We have reached the informal public comment, formal discussion and public comment portion of our agenda. Before we begin that, please note that our next meeting will actually be back in the council chamber on the second floor of City Hall with our new enhanced improvements. Yep, we've had some council members that have never even met there. Yeah, pretty crazy. It's a little more cozy than this. And then also I want to thank, and we want to thank our Harris Cherokee staff that have been working with us back there in the corner for all the great work they've been doing for us and helping come in here as an army comes in here and sets up all these chairs and takes out the trash and does all kinds of things to make sure our communications work. So thank you all for hosting us here for so long. We do technically pay you. Interestingly, even though it's a city facility, but it is an enterprise fund, so it's all good. All right, so we have a few folks signed up under the public comment portion of our agenda, and I'm just going to go in order, and again, 3 minutes to speak. The first person signed up to speak is Paul Howell, and then on deck is Nina Tovish.
Well, hello there, y'all. I got two quick things I want to say. The first is that I got nothing against the YMI or the WANA, but that Juneteenth proclamation that y'all issued should have went to Thomas Boyd and Daniel Suber, because they've been doing the Juneteenth for 11 years. The city, the YMI, the community just took notice these last 2 years. So I think that proclamation is in the wrong place. Just put that out there. My second thing is about this neighborhood matching grant funds. I see that y'all get ready to start another phase, second phase of that. And I'm concerned because the people at the Altamont down the street there, they haven't got nothing from the first phase. And I filed the paperwork for them to get the grant. And I know they haven't got nothing. And I see, since I filed the paperwork November the 2nd, we had the grantee orientation December the 6th. And up to this day, they still haven't got nothing. So I don't know what's up with that, but that could be looked into. Because they just got a year right.
What's the name of that paw? I didn't hear it.
The Altamont Residents Association.
Altamont, okay.
Okay, I see folks taking notes. I assume the application has a contact on it.
Well, I'm no longer on there.
Okay.
Yeah, I got off of there because I got too much going on now. But still, I know the stuff that I put on there was the reason that they got approved for the grant, but they haven't got nothing. Okay, thank you.
And he raised a great point with the proclamation and where the proclamation lives. Who makes that? We don't make that decision. I'm wondering who makes that decision, and if we could redirect that to live wherever the Hillcrest community decides it lives, because Juneteenth has always been their, event.
Okay.
And
Maggie's taking
That's
note.
exactly right. I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Okay, Nina Tovish, and then David Rogers is after Nina Tovish.
Last but not least, on my 3 comments for the evening. Until this last year, felony littering was charged exactly once in the past decade in Buncombe County. I would be interested to know the process by which APD arrived upon this charge as the most appropriate one for a handful of people. 6 months later, it's now 15 or 16 people who arguably were feeding the hungry and exercising their First Amendment rights. Who came up with this creative legal strategy? I can't imagine it was top of mind for APD in the heat of the moment on Christmas Day. Do we owe this innovative approach to a city attorney? Let me be clear. Am I in favor of people dumping trash in public parks? I am not. Do I prefer that protesters refrain from making a mess? Yes. Do I think that charging folks as felons is reasonable in this case? I do not. Do I think that this prosecution will cost the city more than it's worth, both financially and in reputation? Yes, I do. Do I think the city will succeed in getting convictions with this prosecution? I'm skeptical. One likely outcome is misdemeanor pleas. Another is a protracted and expensive litigation around First Amendment issues. Outright dismissal is another plausible result. No matter how it plays out, it makes for an ugly picture for Asheville, and I'd expect headlines nationally just as favorable as those we were graced with for the infamous aid station raid during the George Floyd demonstrations. Is this the best use of city resources? Not to my mind. Neither in the policing effort nor in any subsequent prosecution of charges. I won't even go into the questionable claims about the quantity of so-called trash or the merits of the art projects. For a department that's short-staffed, investigating and pursuing the arrest of 16 citizens for their politically motivated speech and humanitarian efforts seems an absurd and possibly unconstitutional overreach. I urge City Council to drop these charges. I likewise call upon District Attorney Williams to dismiss them. Thank you for your attention.
David Rogers and then Greenleaf Clark. And if Greenleaf Clark isn't here, then Will Hornaday. And Will Hornaday, I don't see you. Then Daniel Young.
Hello, council members. Thank you for your continued consideration of helping get the Jones Park Playground rebuilt. There's a long history of collaboration here between the city and Asheville City Schools. In the late 1990s, the city partnered with the school to help build the baseball field and the playground. The city maintained both initially. Why the playground was abandoned after 5 years is not clear. The city continued providing maintenance over the decades for the baseball field. Mr. McGirt says that the annual maintenance cost for the Jones Elementary baseball field is about $25,000. You all just approved tonight funding the maintenance of Charlie Bullman baseball field at an unknown cost. If you can partner with them, I hope that you can partner with the Asheville City Schools. City staff has said maintaining a playground such as Tempe Avery is likely just $1,500 per year in years 1 through 10, maybe $3,500 to $5,000 in years 11 through 20. The baseball field is used primarily by little boys to play in organized leagues. The playground was used by kids of all ages, genders, and socioeconomic status. It was free to all. Please, I urge you to consider partnering again with Asheville City Schools to sort out how this can be done most effectively and expeditiously. In less than 2 weeks, we have nearly 800 signatures on a petition asking for your help in providing long-term maintenance of what has always been functionally a city park. If we can provide maintenance of the baseball field at Jones, surely we can do the same for the playground used by kids and parents of all socioeconomic backgrounds and ages. Please go to rebuildjonespark.org and look at the link to the petition, and you will see all the comments from your constituents. Please, put politics aside. Do what is right for the kids. I was handing out flyers at the ice cream social the other day, and every little kid I spoke with wanted to have the playground rebuilt. These are kids of all races. The park was used by after-school programs. Literally busloads of kids from other parts of town came to Jones Park to play. I've shared this information with you before. I'm just repeating this as I don't think this has been made clear. This is a playground used by kids from across the city. Please, 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 sincerely, work with ACS to get this going. We can work in parallel, just like when you buy a house. Lots of moving parts. Everyone needs the other party to do things, and it all comes together on closing day. Please do what you need to do to set up an agreement to provide long-term maintenance. ACS board members have pledged to rebuild this when funds became available before they tore it down. I've recently spoken with several board members. They are still supporting this. I've emailed you this directly. We need you all to work together. Thank you for your consideration of this. I am always available to talk, and I would really appreciate the opportunity to have a coffee or a beer with you to discuss any concerns you may have.
The next person signed up to speak is Greenleaf Clark, but I don't see Greenleaf. And then Will Hornaday, and I don't see Will Hornaday. So then Daniel Young. I'm sorry, and then after Daniel Young is Thomas Boyd.
Good afternoon, y'all. This week, I think we got about 4 more days for the death of Mr. Hayes, and we're still fighting for quality housing and public housing. Nothing has changed. None of the parks and recreation centers has been open for our kids to have no safe place to play. But our kids are being victimized or being witnesses seeing other people getting killed. Nothing has been done. When are we gonna do right by our community? By the people that's living in public housing. We got new developments coming in here, don't even care about our community, wanna squeeze us out. But nobody's addressing the problems in Hillcrest and Divatville. Where we gonna go? What's gonna be done? I mean, we need some action. Stop talking about it and do something. What y'all gonna do about the trees in Hillcrest that's been removed? Are they gonna cut them down because they selling drugs at Grove Park Inn like they did Hillcrest? We're not gonna address this problem, huh? Thank you.
Thomas Boyd and then Brooke Heaton.
I basically came up here to introduce myself. I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all know me. Well, some of y'all know who I am. And I'm part of the community, the black community, and the information that I'm receiving right now will be headed to my community. You know what I'm saying? I'm playing that piece, I'm playing that part. And basically I came up here to talk about Juneteenth, but it's so much, I ain't heard nothing being talked about our youth. Like, nobody addressed the youth of trying to, except for that young black man that did come in here. He did come up with a plan where he got a plan to try to help, you know what I'm saying, bring some activities to these cities. I right now live in a project right now, probably about, I say 200 black kids. They ain't got nowhere to go for the summer. What do we expect? Another news article saying one of them got shot. Like, that's the fact, that's what's going on. So, you know, let's kill all this talking. Back and forth. Let's come up with some solutions to help these kids believe in hope and believe in living. Because right now, all thing they seeing is death. I don't know if y'all care or not, but it's what's going on in our neighborhoods. And, you know, trying to help us come together, do some good for our communities. That would be very useful as far as the resources that we had to struggle to get for Juneteenth, just to bring some happiness and healing to our community. It was very troubling. We done volunteered a whole lot of time trying to bring this stuff together to make our community, you know what I'm saying, heal. And the lack of resources and help and representation for our community as far as for this Juneteenth celebration, that's gonna do a lot of good. We put a lot of money in a lot of vendors' pocket, you know what I'm saying, and the resource that we got was very limited. And I'm not here to blame nobody, but I'm just saying for future references, when y'all see some good going on in the community, try to support that without the bickering and the pushback, you know what I mean? That's all I had to say.
Thank you. That does make me think, I know, gentlemen, you're leaving, but maybe at the next city council meeting, Deborah, you could talk a little bit about our funding for the summer programming that's come together recently here, for mostly for children who are living in public housing during the summer, for summer camp. All right, the next person signed up to speak is Brooke Heaton, and then the last speaker is Honor Moore.
Thanks for sticking around. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilor, City Manager Campbell, thank you for your service and your time. I wanted to first thank you and commend you for including funding for an urban forester in the FY 22-23 budget. You've made a lot of people happy, and you've heard from many of them here tonight. An urban forester is central to establishing an urban forest master plan, and something that the Urban Forestry Commission and members of the community, including myself, have been calling on for years. It also provides a critical missing piece following on 2 policy initiatives that were approved by this body, the Tree Canopy Protection Amendment and the Zero Net Loss Tree Canopy Resolution, the latter of which sets out an ambitious goal of expanding our tree canopy to 50% by the year 2040. We know from the Urban Tree Canopy Study commissioned in 2019 that our city has experienced a 6.4% loss in our canopy from 2008 to 2018. I think we can comfortably assume that we continue to see further loss today. I believe an urban forester will play a critical role in understanding and promoting the health and expansion of our tree canopy toward that 50% goal. Yesterday, our city experienced record temperatures made all the worse by the urban heat island effect. Watching the news coming out of the Yellowstone National Park, we see the potential that extreme rainfall can have on communities such as ours. We know that our tree canopy is nature's air conditioner, reducing temperatures, and also plays a role in sequestering rainwater and runoff. Our tree canopy is an essential part of our infrastructure. So let's preserve and protect it. So thank you for including the urban forester in the budget. Second, I want to thank you, along with David, for lending your support to considering rebuilding Jones Park. I know there are details that need to be fleshed out in terms of cooperating with the school district, but I just want to acknowledge the fact that this was a community park. It was considered part of the fabric of this community. I went there, although I'm not from North Asheville, I live in West Asheville, but I went there frequently with my son when he was young. I think we came to learn through the pandemic how critical parks and playgrounds are to our community as safe places to gather where children of all ages and of all backgrounds can come together, parents as well. And I just hope that you will continue to work with folks and actors. The cost of maintaining that site, which I believe is about a half an acre or an acre, is very modest. I imagine the cost of this meeting right now is greater than the annual cost of maintaining that. We're talking about mowing some grass, picking up some trash. But thank you for your leadership. I hope you can meet the community in the middle on this, and that we can rebuild that park and have another awesome park for the city. I believe we should have a park within a 10-minute walk of every resident, and I'll stick to that, that initiative and that goal. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Honor Moore is our last speaker for the evening.
Greetings, esteemed councilwomen. So great to see all of you. First, I just want to say thank you so much for your public service. You all read like 500 emails a day. You hear lots of opinions at public comment. This is actually my first time coming in person to public comment. So what brought me here was the potential rebuilding of Jones Park. I raised my kids a couple miles away from Jones Park and used it a lot with them. They went to Jones Elementary School as well. And when the park was torn down, I actually thought that this was a city park. I had no idea, which I think most people didn't realize, that it was owned by the Asheville City Schools. So it's been an education actually for a lot of people. Basically, this park has been used like a city park for the last 20 years. A lot of you who've been around know some of the parents who originally built it with their own 2 hands. So years ago, I was the executive director in the Parks and Rec department for the Asheville Parks and Greenways Foundation, which was at that time the fundraising arm for Parks and Rec projects. And I could be a fly on the wall and go to CIP meetings and kind of see how things like this particular project would bubble up. And this project would be kind of the ideal because it was going to be privately funded, at least all the equipment. And so oftentimes the city would work on making this kind of opportunity happen because the funding, was there. So I'm sorry that this has been thrown your way. I know that that is a pain. It's not part of a strategic plan. Gwen, I heard you talk at the last meeting how kids have a lot of green space. I can tell you as a mother in North Asheville, on that side of Merriman, the only specific children's park with play equipment left is Weaver Park. That's the only one left. And that's a huge neighborhood, a huge territory for kids. Also, just to finally say, it's right by a public school, at the bottom of the hill, close to a bus line, close to this road diet that's coming, where people will be biking up to a couple blocks away. I know that project's moving forward. And because people thought it was a city park, buses have been taking kids there for the last 20 years for camps, all sorts of things. It's really used by kids all over the city. So I'm hoping it's a nominal maintenance fee to the city and that we can work it out and hopefully it can be maintained by the city. And thank you all very much for your consideration. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Just on the Jones Park, just where we are right now. First of all, I'd like to say that the Vice Mayor received a letter from my son asking that Jones Park be rebuilt. One of my 3 boys apparently took it upon himself to write to her. So that's how it's going down in our house. Yes, I know. She just opened it right at the beginning of the meeting, and I was like, what?
I'm like, is this your boy?
Yes. So the school board is going to put this on their agenda for June 30th to just make the threshold decision. They've already told us that they do not have the capacity to maintain the park were it to be rebuilt. And they have various other reasons why they've decided not to move in that direction. And we've sort of struggled through that because as a parent, I did get an email last summer from the school system saying, we're going to have to demolish this park. But don't worry, we're going to rebuild it when we have the funds. But they have changed course on that, and they do not feel that they have the staffing capacity to be able to maintain the park, and they have the children at the school using other park facilities around the school. So the playground facilities around the school. So, but before this, and this council has asked staff to evaluate this proposal, which they're doing, and our Parks and Rec director is here. But before we can get to our part of this, we do need to understand from the board, from the Asheville City School Board, whether or not they will allow the park to be rebuilt under any kind of partnership agreement, whether we add this park to our MOU with them for facilities we maintain. There are some other city school facilities that the city maintains because they're mostly all, I believe, fields that we program with sports. Whether we lease it, whether we have to take title to it, in other words, what would it take for the school system to feel comfortable with the park being rebuilt and the city maintaining it? Once they answer that question, if that's a green light, then it would come to us to answer the question of whether or not we're willing to take that on. So they have told us they're going to put it on their agenda for June 30th. They obviously have a lot going on over there, and then we'll be able to digest whatever it is they say and move forward with our piece. Unfortunately, it is going to hit us June. We don't have another meeting till the end of July because we take the first meeting in July off. So we won't be meeting again until I believe it's July 26th. Anyway, process-wise, that's where it's at. So everybody run back across the town to that meeting on June 30th, and then come back here hopefully. So including my youngest son, who will need to do that. All right. Anything else? Anybody?
I wanted to speak to some of the comments that were made by the Black men that were represented tonight. Seems an ongoing theme that we need more neighborhood engagement, family fun, like family-friendly things in our neighborhood. They kind of speak to the burden that's on a lot of our communities at this very moment because we've suffered a lot of death by gun violence. And it's happened in broad daylight. It's our children, our families, our elders need safe places to exist and to have fun and to gather. And right now that is seeming like it's impossible to find. So with another man in the room, I'm asking that we expedite our vision for our community centers and safe places for our kids to be, because as I'm talking to a lot of our youth development program managers or program founders, I mean, they're doing the work. They're doing as much as they can, but they don't have a permanent place that they can call home, that they can create this safe and stable and nurturing environment for our children. So as a community, we're going to have to co-create something that is impactful, something that has a long-term effects on not only our children, but all residents who live here. And I'm pretty sure that we can make that happen. We just need a vision. We just have to make it happen, because it's getting to the point where, you know, I'm almost moved to tell people to be very, very cautious of where you let your kids play. Like, do we call a curfew? A curfew might not work if people are getting shot in broad daylight. Like, the reality of gun violence and the volume of gun violence in our community is something that we should have at the forefront of our radar, because the summer months are here. A lot happens in the summer. There's a lot of activity on all different levels. And as a mother, I want people to feel safe. So I know we have some things in the queue, but we're going to have to get those things moving and popping, because lives are being taken.
And you're talking about our initiatives to open our rec centers and make them more available for youth activities. Yes. And you know, and as I alluded to earlier, we also have taken steps to help fund a summer program at Eddington Center. So maybe we could hear kind of comprehensively the things that we're doing on the part of the city and with our facilities and our programming.
And I think there's a deeper level of coordination that's going on right now with some friends from Charlotte who has, you know, a thriving program. But I think a disconnect is like the trust in city services. If it's going to be long-standing, like, we have to strengthen our trust in one another, and to make sure we're very honest about what we can actually provide the community. But I'm going to continue to say, you know, we're going to have to co-create something, and whoever comes to the table, you're going to have to be just as consistent as you are with the loudness of your roar. I mean, things are serious, but we need hands on deck. That's long-standing.
When is the application process opening for the strategic partnership funds? Is that the 21st?
We're pushing that through. I'm telling you, we expedited it, and now I'm thinking that with that process coming through, that is only a measure of what we need to provide for our children. City Manager Campbell has continued to say that we need a whole child approach. And with the strategic partnership funds, we can possibly do that. But how can we speak to the academic wellness while speaking to the mental and social learning of a child, as well as make sure their environment is straight? You know, that is a three-pronged attack, and I'm not sure that we can do that with SPF funds alone.
July, Kim.
Oh, and then to that point, you know, because I've been in some deep thought about it, you know, this is a quick turnaround, and a lot of our youth organizations and organizations that serve our families who are in duress, I'll continue to say that we think about how to allow people to submit video submissions, because grant writing is a beast, and you can be very productive and be effective at your work, but sitting down, collecting your mind to sit down and write something out, that is a huge impediment when it comes to getting funding. So I know that there is twofold. You have to be able to tell your story and give your narrative and hit all the points, as well as submit a budget. But maybe that is an additional thing. Maybe we can allow folks to submit a video response and then have a budget to prove or to prove the use of funds. That would be very helpful.
So, Vice Mayor, thank you for those comments. We, looks like June 22nd through July 12th, we're asking people to apply, but actually a letter is going out tonight. It went out tonight to various organizations, encouraging them, just kind of getting them additional notification. We have streamlined the application process. I think there's like 4 questions, or no, 10 questions, 4 pages. 4-page maximum. Okay, of the questions. So we're not asking for anything elaborate. And we are looking forward to having our conversation with
So can I spend it another time? Maybe not video submissions, but I know a lot of organizations, they do this work a lot. So they already have a program narrative that they've, submitted to CodeThink or ZedEc. Can they not just recycle it and send it over to us?
Absolutely.
Yes.
If they meet any of the criteria that is being asked for, I really think it's going to be a simple process. And we will give feedback if it wasn't.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Maggie, you were off by 22 minutes. I just want to tell you. Okay.
I blame you guys for that.
All right. We're adjourned. Thank you, pickleball people, for coming again. You guys are going the distance. Yeah, we saw.